Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Somebody literally just tweeted me and said, can you let the public know the days you're not on air? I was on air yesterday at 11 a.m., a Stillman & Company special. Ian, did you listen to the Stillman & Company special yesterday?
You know what? I did not, actually.
I mean, what are we doing over here? Ian, you just took the whole day off.
I know. Sorry. I got distracted, I guess.
You know what? That's okay. We all understand. But I want everybody out there to know that starting today, we are full go. That, again, I was gone to a certain extent, for a lot of July. And then I came back and said it's football season, but now, post-Labor Day, I'm all in. Ian's all in. We're all in because it's football season. And we are turning our attention to the 2024 Tennessee Titans, and this week, week 1 against the Chicago Bears. I mean, I already had to tell my girlfriend. I said, look, I will probably be, I assume, I actually haven't checked the liners, Ian, to know if this is 100% or not, but I assume we're at Twin Peaks for the pregame show on Sunday. So, I mean, we are right there for kickoff. Thursday night, we have a game.
Twin Peaks in Cool Springs.
Twin Peaks in Cool Springs. I will be there at 9:30 on Sunday for the pregame show. We are there. It is the football season. It is Chicago Bears week. So don't worry about where I'm going to be. Because for the next 4 months, I am going to be right here at 2 o'clock, and I don't see any of that changing until maybe the end of December. Then things will get a little hairy. But that's where we are right now. And I want to start with something that was said yesterday. It's the one thing for every fan when a coach gets fired and a new coach gets hired to say, this new coach is the answer to our prayers. And it's equally as easy to say, the old coach, it was all his fault. Now, we know that it's more than just coaching when it comes to winning and losing in football. Ed Orgeron has a national championship. But that's the way fans treat it. And I think for the most part, that's the way owners treat it and athletic directors treat it. And Billy Napier is going to get fired at Florida. And guess what? They're going to say when they bring the new guy in, no. This guy we hired at Lafayette Tech, this guy is our guy. Which takes me to the Titans. I don't know if the vibes, I don't know if that's going to help them win on Sunday against the Chicago Bears. But the vibes inside that building are definitely positive. One of the things the old man used to talk about every year was, it's week 1 and everybody thinks they're going to the Super Bowl. Ha, 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 ha. Well, I got to tell you, I don't think the Titans are saying that they think they're going to the Super Bowl, but I think they're saying they're going to be a lot better than everybody makes them out to be. Whether or not they are, that's their business. We shall see. That is TBD. But where I think a lot of this optimism for the Titans is coming from, I really think it's from one place. And it's from a place that if 1 year ago today, now my entire life's been upside down for an entire year. It feels like I've been just riding the roller coaster here. But 1 year ago today, if I told you where the optimism for the 2024 Tennessee Titans was going to come from, you would have been angry. You wouldn't have believed me. I think some of you would have wanted to fight me because the optimism for the 2024 Tennessee Titans is coming from the idea that Mike Vrabel was the problem. Titans fans have spent the last week celebrating the firing of John Robinson because guys like Malik Willis and Caleb Farley are no longer on the team. But I think the Titans brass, the ownership, the front office, the locker room, I don't think they miss Robinson as much as you guys are celebrating his dismissal. I don't think they think Robinson was the problem as much as they think it was Mike Vrabel. For Harold Landry yesterday And this all started because Landry said that guys can be themselves. He was asked about the change in the building and just talked about how it was a night and day difference. For Harold Landry, the most pro Mike Vrabel guy, the guy who played at Boston College, the guy who's had one coach in his NFL career, the one guy he's ever played for Harold Landry to join Arden Key and join Will Levis and join others who have taken some subtle and not so subtle digs, like Landry yesterday at Mike Vrabel, it's pretty wild. I was talking with somebody about this yesterday because a year ago there was a sense of optimism surrounding the Titans because of Mike Vrabel. Now there's a sense of optimism because Mike Vrabel's gone and this guy is going to make it so much better. And it seems to me like the Tennessee Titans, their fans, their owners, their players, everybody, I mean, really everybody. It seems like Mike Vrabel is starting to become President Warren G. Harding, the former president of the United States. In what do you know about Warren G. Harding?
Not much.
Warren G. Harding died in office in 1923. When he died, he was considered one of the most beloved presidents in United States history. Granted, it was 1923. It was 100 years ago. So we've had a bunch of presidents since then. But at that point in time, Warren G. Harding was loved across the United States of America. Then after his death, there were scandal after scandal that started to come out. Most notably, the Teapot Dome scandal. If you're familiar with that. Had some extramarital affairs, had some of his buddies he hired, which, by the way, speaking of hiring buddies, who's that sound like? And that seems to be what's going on here with Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, when he was the coach here, everybody said, it's okay, Jared, we got Mike Vrabel. Now Mike Vrabel's gone, and everybody's saying, it's going to be different, Jared, because we got rid of Mike Vrabel. That's where the optimism is coming from. And I don't know if Mike Vrabel was the problem or was not the problem. And I was the guy in the media that put his hand up and said, I'm firing him. At the end of the year, I'm firing Vrabel. I'm starting over. I need a fresh start. And I still think Vrabel's a good coach. But I thought it was time for Vrabel to go. But now what's happened is that every single person, it feels like, if Harold Landry is going to tell you, yeah, it's way better now than it used to be. Guys can be themselves. Guys know why they're doing what they're doing. For Harold Landry to say it, and I don't think over the years we've been doing this, I don't think we have ever talked about anything controversial Harold Landry has ever said or done.
Probably not. No.
I can't think of a single thing. And this isn't controversial either. I mean, Landry was asked a question. Landry answered the question. For Harold Landry to join the chorus of it was all Mike Vrabel, which isn't what he said, but it is kind of the sentiment. It is the vibe. That's pretty telling. And again, I don't know if Mike Vrabel, I don't know if Mike Vrabel was the problem or not, but they think Mike Vrabel was the problem. And they think because of Mike Vrabel, and I would also add to this his coaching staff, which he was in charge of, which is the head coach's job to a large degree, was also part of this problem. Because of that, that's why the Titans look at themselves in the mirror and they think they can compete when there are a lot of people who don't think they can compete. They look at a roster, I think we can all agree, has holes. It's not perfect, but they're like, no. It's good enough. And the drop-off in coaching is actually going to be a plus. So when everybody around the country thinks, oh, well, they lost Mike Vrabel, they're thinking the other way around, saying, oh, it's going to be so much better because we got rid of Mike Vrabel. Now, will that help them win on Sunday? I don't know. But that is the positivity that they've come out with. That's where it's coming from. That, again, as the old man used to say, everybody thinks they're going to the Super Bowl. in week 1. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. Again, I did think it was time for a change. I also thought that the young quarterback needed an offensive guru coach, which they went out and hired, which I like. And I think Vrabel was getting a little too big for his panties. But I do wonder, how much does this actually matter come Sunday? We'll get to that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Plus, another way in which I feel like the Titans, they're not saying it, but they're saying it when it comes to Vrabel and the difference between him and Callahan. We'll do it next. 615-737-1025. Stillman & Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
How has it changed? I feel like it's changed in the sense that I know a lot of guys have said this, but I think it's like real. Like, I feel like when guys show up here now, guys feel confident that they can be themselves and that they can operate how they know they best operate to perform as good as they can on Sunday. Because everybody's different. I feel like guys are happy that they can come into the building and kind of trust the work that they've been putting in.
How you mentioned being able to trust the work that you put in now, that wasn't the case before? And if so,
no, I just think that I feel like, the old way was everybody was kind of locked into one way of like doing things. But now I feel like the box has been open and there's so many more people involved in the preparation process. And, like for guys who've done it for a while, there's a trust between us and the coaching staff that, everybody has different ways to prepare for the game. And I just feel like now we have that trust and that confidence to come into the building, and, everybody can kind of not necessarily be locked into one box, but like guys know what they need to do to get ready for Sunday.
There you go. That was Harold Landry. And I mean, Ian, he could have just come out and said it.
Said
That's
what?
a lot of words right there about the change and Vrabel out and, and Brian Callahan in. It just feels like guys can be themselves, and
They're vibing.
it just kind of seems like,
To steal
we
a
can
Pred
really, the preparation and everybody can do what it takes, and it's not one way of thinking and it's multiple ways and everybody's involved and blah, blah, blah. I mean, come on, Harold. Just say it. Just say it. You think Mike Vrabel was a problem. He won't say it. Nobody over there will come out and say it. Rand Carthon will tell you all about how hard it was to fire Mike Vrabel, even though he technically didn't do the firing, how hard it was on his family to get rid of Mike Vrabel. But they won't come out and say, they'll tell you how great things are now and how everybody's working together and everybody believes and everybody's this. But nobody will say what they're trying to tell you. If you hit closed captioning, they might as well just put Mike Vrabel was the problem. And again, I don't know if Mike Vrabel was the problem or not. We're going to find out Sunday if Mike Vrabel was the problem or not. But here's where I can promise you that the Titans' actions are telling us that they think Vrabel was the problem. And it's two guys in particular, Dylan Radins and Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, a.k.a.
PT.
PT. Radins and PT are where there's a giant banner outside that just say, we think Vrabel screwed up. Because, again, and I haven't sat down with Brian Callahan and talked to him directly about this, but I've heard enough of what he's had to say. And it sounds to me like he thinks he can win with those guys. Now, some of that is, hey, these are the only guys we got. And since these are the only guys we got, this is who we're going to go with. But some of it, I think, is we actually think we can coach these guys up. Now, what I've seen over the years from Radins and PT make me think it's highly unlikely that that's what's going to happen. But all I've seen from Radins and PT on the football field, all I've seen in real games are them being coached by Keith Carter and Jason Houdeling, Mike Vrabel's guys. Now we're seeing them coached by Brian Callahan and Bill Callahan. Now, again, some people will say, well, it wasn't Vrabel who was the problem, but it was Vrabel's coaches who are the problem, and they'll use the offensive line coach in this instance when it comes to Radins and PT and whomever else, and they'll say that, hey, it wasn't Vrabel's fault. The offensive line coach wasn't very good, except who hired the offensive line coach? Now, do they think that the problem is because Vrabel hired a bad offensive line coach, and with Brian Callahan, everybody knew? Like, I know they keep saying that that Brian Callahan didn't think Bill Callahan was going to come, and Bill Callahan said it wasn't until he saw the press conference that he decided he wanted to come coach for Brian Callahan, and that Brian Callahan told him in the meeting that he couldn't get his dad to come be the O-line coach. I know they say that. They kind of have to because it's tampering with the Cleveland Browns if they don't say that. But part of me thinks part of the allure of Brian Callahan was if you get Brian, you get Bill. So how much of it was he's going to bring over a better offensive coaching staff between himself calling the plays, which is going to be better than Todd Downing or Tim Kelly, and his dad coaching the offensive line, and then everything else, whether it's Tony Dews or Rob Moore versus Tyke Tolbert, and I don't even know who the running backs coach is now. Whatever. Like, is that comparison, who cares? But the line coach and the play caller and the designer and all of that, is it that was the Vrabel problem and why Radens and PT weren't any good? Or
Randy Jordan.
Randy Jordan,
running backs coach.
whoever the hell that is. Randy, coach him up because I want to run the ball on Sunday against Chicago. Or was it Brian Callahan looked at the film and he came in and said, look, I can coach these guys. Like, these guys, they're not that bad. And again, this is where I kind of go back to that whole Robinson-Vrabel thing. And I'm not covering for Robinson because, again, as I say, whose responsibility is it to make sure that Mike Vrabel has the right offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, offensive line coach, etc.? The answer is Mike Vrabel. Well, whose job is it to make sure that when he hires Mike Vrabel to be the coach, that Mike Vrabel has the ability and the personality to be able to look in the mirror and make changes, which he was unable to do. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt has no problem looking in the mirror and saying, I've got to change. You know, when I was thinking about this today, and I'm very, very happy for Vandy and very, very happy for Clark. But I think the difference between Clark Lee and Vrabel, Ian, this just popped into my head.
What's that?
Well, each man had two choices when things weren't going their way.
Oh, okay. A Chris Sandersism.
And you know what Clark decided to do?
Get better.
And you know what Mike decided to do?
I guess get bitter.
Get bitter. And it does kind of feel that way a little bit. So I wonder how much of it was, again, like this idea of Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan told Caroline at the Combine, like very quickly, was like, oh, I think PT and Duncan, I think they can do it. And I didn't like that one bit. Because, again, what I know of Duncan is what I've seen in the games. The same as how I feel about Brewer. I don't know. Could Bill Callahan coach Brewer to be good? I don't think so. But all I know is what I've seen in the games. But I think that's an example of where the coaching staff, the new coaching staff has come in and they've told ownership, because ownership doesn't know who's better at guard and tackle, and that's not their job. Their job is to sit upstairs and pay the right guys to pick the right players and to coach them up and to put in the best schemes. And then when they feel like they've got guys that can't do it, then they need to go get new guys to come do it. That's ownership's job. And then when it comes to the, hey, we'd really like an extra $30 million to trade for L'Jarius Sneed, then it's like, okay, well, now you got to do your job. You got to write the check. That's ownership's job. And so I wonder if ownership, they're looking at Brian Callahan, and Brian Callahan saying, I mean, I can coach these two offensive linemen up. Just see. Now, again, I personally am not saying any of this definitively. I am not saying that I think that Callahan's great and Vrabel sucks and PT and Radens are the man and Bill Callahan could coach up anybody to play on the offensive line. I'm not saying that. But I am telling you that it does feel like the hope and expectation is that Brian Callahan can coach Mike Vrabel's players better than Mike Vrabel could coach Mike Vrabel's players. And again, it's one thing for ownership to make a change and to say, that's our guy. It's another thing for the coaching staff, for the front office that hired this guy to be the coach. It's another thing for them to say, hey, he can do it. And that change from that guy who sucked to this guy who's good is the difference. That'll always happen. But it's a totally different thing when it's the players. And it's a totally different thing when, again, Brian Callahan is coming to you as the general manager or coming to you as the owner or whatever and is saying, hey, these guys that we've written off as guys that can't play, I think they can play. I think we can coach them up. I think these guys are better. That's what Sean McVay did when he took over Jeff Fisher's heap of a team and turned them into a contender overnight. He's like, no, I can win with Jared Goff and Todd Gurley. And then he did. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Ian, you'd be shocked. A lot of people want to weigh in on this.
Oh, yes. Vrabel, always.
Ahead of the Chicago Bears game, which we will spend time today on Chicago. Ian, I wondered this aloud yesterday. Is Chicago a 4-day team?
I mean, it's week one. I say so.
It's week one. They've got the number one pick at quarterback. It's
a lot of hype around them.
A lot of hype. I think they're a 4-day team. but everybody wants to weigh in on this. So we'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Plus, I want to separate what I am telling you about what they think compared to what I think and what I know. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Ian, I did not know the Sounds were at home taking on the Gwinnett Stripers.
Hey, your chance to see your baby Braves.
Well, I mean, let me say this. They were talking about Ozzy Albies might have a rehab assignment.
Uh-huh.
We need him back ASAP. Braves stunk it up the other night, which really hurt me. They couldn't turn a double play at the end of the game. They lost or whatever. But the Sounds are taking on Gwinnett. We'll be giving away tickets later today on the program, by the way. Pregame is at 6:20. First pitch at 6:35. And coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, 5 Points Roofing, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning.
Oh, nothing surprises me. This is my 25th NFL training camp, so I would say that nothing surprises me in the National Football League. That's part of the job. I think it's disappointing. I think you're disappointed, that you couldn't, do the job the way that they wanted it or they envisioned it. But again, this is the opportunity that I think is best for me right now to be able to go through, draft meetings, personnel meetings with Andrew and his staff and see how that all got navigated and how they may do things. And there's 32 flavors in this league and everybody does it a little differently. So it's been fun to be a part of this and try to help where I can and most especially learn.
If Mike Vrabel has another press conference in the near future, can we please get the Cleveland people to play him the Harold Landry cut from yesterday or the Arden Key comments from before and say, Mike, what do you make of that? Knowing that Vrabel's probably not going to say anything, but with Vrabel, you never know because sometimes he just can't help himself. Now, I want everybody to think about what we've seen for the last week of college football because the exact same thing is going to happen in the NFL. What we have seen with Clemson, Florida State, Florida, etc., all these coaches that are on the hot seat after one game, this is going to happen in the NFL. If the Cleveland Browns go into Dallas, thanks in large part to Mike Vrabel's little push on the swing from behind as a consultant, and they beat the Cowboys, who did absolutely nothing in the offseason to improve, if they go beat the Cowboys on Sunday, they're going to be calling for Mike McCarthy to be fired. You know it. I know it. We all know it. Every time that happens, because what is always the first question? Anytime, Ian, we talk about firing somebody or benching somebody or going with a different quarterback, what's always the question? People that get really defensive about firing the coach, what is it they always say?
Who are you hiring?
Who are you going to hire that's any better than them? And the answer 95% of the time, it's going to be Mike Vrabel. So just prepare yourself, even as the Titans, whether it's ownership or the vibes in the building or the players or whomever, even as they tell you, we think Vrabel was the problem and we think we've hired the right guy to solve the issue, his name's going to come up everywhere. And if you can't see it, you're not watching what's going on in college football right now, where, Ian, I was telling you during the break, we got flight tracking going on in and out of Gainesville right now on Twitter.
Only took a week.
Only took a week. And look, I think Mike Vrabel's going to win. If he goes somewhere where he's got a quarterback in the future, I think he'll go somewhere and he'll win. Especially if he can bring Arthur Smith with him, because I think it's pretty obvious that Vrabel doesn't know anything about offense and that he's literally just throwing darts up against the board when it comes to picking offensive coordinators. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. 615-737-1025. Steve has texted into the program. Ian, Steve, the one who always texts incessantly 4 hours a day throughout every show.
Yes, I'm aware of Steve and his YouTube presence here and there as well.
I got to say something about Steve. I'm not saying I don't love Steve, because Steve listens to this program 20 hours a week, and I appreciate that. But the other day I looked at it, I was like, does Steve text the other shows? And it was like his last text the day before. This was, I think, Friday I looked at it. His last text was the day before at like 4:52. And then he was texting at like 2:13 on Friday. So I don't know if Steve listens to the other shows or not, but Steve, we love you and we appreciate you. Steve says, can we privately agree that the majority of time, again, Steve is saying this, not me. Can we privately agree that the majority of Titans fans are uneducated, grunting idiots? No. He continues. They have been ones that love Vrabel because they didn't know any better. Those that played, coached, and understand the game, I'm one of them, knew better. People with inside information, like me, knew better. From the AFC Championship game and onward, I am disappointed, he said. I am disappointed that you still think Vrabel is a good coach and it took you this long to admit he was the problem. Vrabel is a motivational speaker. That is all, says Steve. Guys, Vrabel is not a bad coach. Now, there I think Vrabel's going to be the kind of guy who's going to go somewhere and he's going to win. And then after he wins, 4 or 5 years later, he'll piss off all those fans. He'll piss off that owner. He'll piss off all those players, and he'll be out looking for another job. Because Mike Vrabel, no matter what they say, cannot, as Chris Sanders would say when it comes to getting better or getting bitter, he can't get better. He only gets bitter. Now, I think this Cleveland thing, I think this is an opportunity for him to actually get better because he's going to work a little bit in personnel. But here's the most important thing for Vrabel, and I need you guys to hear this. And this is where it was John Robinson's fault and ownership's fault and not so much Vrabel's fault about the coaching staff. When you hire a guy who's got 3 years or 4 years of experience as an NFL assistant coach, who the hell are they going to know to be able to hire on their staff? And that's why everybody Vrabel hired came from the New England Patriots, came from the Houston Texans, and came from Ohio State. Remember, he hired Kerry Coombs from Ohio State and Shane Bowen from the Texans. And his first reach, like the first guy he reached out to about being offensive coordinator of the Titans before they hired Matt LaFleur, who basically, my understanding was they went up to him and they said, hey, you okay with Matt LaFleur? And he said, fine, which is a red flag in and of itself. But his first guy he reached out to was Ryan Day. Again, Ohio State. That's all he knew. Whereas Brian Callahan's been in all these different places over the years. Think about Floyd Reese, for instance. When it comes to the experience he had as a coach, then as an assistant general manager, then as a general manager, if he was to put a coaching staff together, if he were to, even be a head coach, but if he were to put a coaching staff together, well, he coached with Bill Belichick. He coached with Nick Saban. And this was before Nick Saban was Nick Saban. And Bill Belichick was Bill Belichick. This was in the Lions, with the Lions, when Bill was married to his first wife, who's like 70 years younger than his current girlfriend. Like that. So how many guys over the years across the league would he have with all the years and experience well, think about Bill Callahan and how many guys he knows over the years that can sit there and make suggestions to Brian Callahan about, hey, we should hire this guy. We should hire that guy. We can go get this guy. We can get that guy. Brian Callahan's been at like 6 different places. So he knows, hey, this guy, we had him in Cincinnati. He's a good coach. Hey, this guy, I worked with him with the Raiders. He's a good coach. Let's bring him in. I mean, even Ran. Because, again, the connection with Denard Wilson is Ran. Rand's been in San Francisco. He's been in L.A. He's been in Atlanta. He's been other places. And so when it comes to Vrabel's just a motivational speaker, I don't think that's fair. I think he was a good coach. But the hiring of the assistant coaches and how much of a jerk he was about all of that, that's a problem when you don't know anybody. And I just kind of is what it is. One texter says, if Vrabel was to ever bring Arthur Smith with him, he'd better make sure that he has a generational running back on the team, plus a superstar receiver. If not, Arthur Smith sucks. Let me say this about Arthur Smith. Let's say that the Titans got turned down by everybody. That the Titans fired Vrabel, and they interviewed Brian Callahan, and he took the Carolina job. And they interviewed Mike McDaniel, and he took the Seattle job. And they interviewed Dan Quinn, and he took the Washington job. We've seen this before. This is how Kentucky ends up having to turn to Mark Pope for basketball. Because, John Calipari leaves. They called Scott Drew. He said no. They called Jay Wright. He said no. They called everybody, and they said no. And it was like, okay, well, let's just go get this guy. And they had to hire Arthur Smith as head coach. I would argue that Arthur would be a pretty good coach. Now, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm caught up in when they were lighting it up because of Derrick Henry, because of A.J. Brown, maybe I'm caught up in all of that. But I still think Arthur's a pretty good coach. One texter says, how many games, Chris in Nashville says, how many games will the Cowboys play before Mike Vrabel is mentioned as a replacement for Mike McCarthy? Ian, do you think 1 week from today, again, the Cowboys, I guess 6 days from today, because the Cowboys play on Sunday, and even though it feels like Monday, it's actually Tuesday. If the Cowboys lose to Cleveland, do you think there will be talk about Mike Vrabel being the next coach of the Dallas Cowboys?
No,
Really?
not after 1 week.
How many weeks?
4. First 4 weeks, if they have a bad start, give it a month, something like that.
I don't know if it'll be Vrabel they're talking about after week 1. I think it'll be after week 1, though. They're talking about getting rid of Mike McCarthy.
I don't know. Cleveland's not like, Carolina.
Again, Steve claims that he's got some serious inside info. But who knows? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to more of your phones. Again, ahead of the Chicago Bears, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. And let me tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right. I absolutely love FanDuel Sportsbook. It's my official sportsbook app. They are the best. That's right. And they've got a great offer for you, because right now, if you hook up with FanDuel Sportsbook, again, America's #1 sportsbook, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. Visit FanDuel.com/JGM to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. 21 and over in Present Tennessee. Full price of NFL Sunday Ticket will be automatically charged seasonally after free trial. No refunds. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
How excited are you just to kind of see what this product looks like, and with Will at the controls kind of running the offense?
No, I can't wait. That's that part. I can't wait to see what our team is. I think we've had glimpses of what I think we're capable of over the course of training camp and the preseason. And again, we haven't faced a starting NFL defense yet, and that's okay, other than our own and a little bit of Seattle. But I do think that that's the part that I'm looking forward to, is to see what we are. And that's the exciting part about every season, is you get a chance to learn. Your team's going to grow. It's going to change. And that's the fun process. That's the journey part of it that I enjoy the most. And we got ourselves a journey ahead of us. There's no doubt.
There you go. It's Brian Callahan talking about the Titans and talking about the excitement for the season. And I got to be honest, I'm pretty excited too. Pretty excited about it too. Phone lines here on the program are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One text says, I think we should see Callahan's work before we bash Mike Vrabel. See, I agree. And this is why, again, people are going to hear what I said today. Again, what I heard was Harold Landry throw Vrabel under the bus. He didn't say it, but he said it. And that convinced me. Again, Landry to me is probably the most pro-Vrabel guy, period. He went to Boston College. I don't think he played with Vrabel's son. Maybe he played with Vrabel's son. But it was the coach that recruited Vrabel's son. And remember Vrabel's fetish for Boston College at that point in time? He hired the strength coach from Boston College, and he wanted everybody out of Boston College. Surprising Vrabel didn't hire Steve Adazio to be the offensive line coach at any point, but again, that's a different discussion, I guess. But Landry always liked Vrabel, always got along, never caused any problems. He's a Vrabel kind of guy. Got his contract from the Titans, etc. And yet, even Harold Landry's like, yeah, it's better around here. And this isn't the first time I've heard somebody say something that alludes to it's better. Whether it's Arden Key, Levis has made a couple of comments about the freedoms to kind of do things differently. The front office, they talk about the vibes and the cohesion and everything else. Again, they're not saying Vrabel's the problem, but they're saying Vrabel's the problem. I am not saying Vrabel was the problem. Now, I would have fired Vrabel. If I owned that team, I'd have fired him at the end of the year. Now, I'd have fired Rand too, and I'd have started over. But I'd have fired Vrabel, period. But I'm also not sitting here saying, they're going to Chicago, and they're going to win, and they're going to win 10 games this year because they've got a better coach. Whereas, for instance, on the other hand, with the Predators, I did vehemently believe last year that, hey, they were a team that was right on the cusp of making the playoffs. They didn't make the playoffs, and Andrew Burnett's a better coach than John Hines, so they should comfortably make the playoffs. And they comfortably made the playoffs last year. So I'm not saying I believe Vrabel was solely the problem. I think Vrabel had run its course and it was time for him to go. But I am not convinced that Brian Callahan is the guy, and I don't mean that in a negative way, though many of you are going to take it that way, because it's not just this blind optimism of, oh, he's never coached a game, but I totally believe. I'm not doing that. But I do think they're in a better spot with the coach. This is what I would have done. But agreed. And again, what happens here too is the way you all will feel about Mike Vrabel, not how you feel about him now, but the way you will feel about Mike Vrabel when all is said and done is pretty much based on how Brian Callahan does. If Brian Callahan is the man, then you will say good riddance to Mike Vrabel. If Brian Callahan stinks, if he's the Billy Napier of the Titans, Ken Wisenhunt, then you guys will say, oh God, when we had Vrabel, it was just so much better. Kyle texts in and says, has Jared made his game-by-game season prediction for the Titans yet? No, I have not made a season prediction for the Titans other than we did the whole shebang thing. We did that earlier. Robert says, diehard Bears fan living in Nashville. I've been looking forward to this week since the schedule came out. That being said, have you done a prediction on the outcome yet? I mean, Ian, these people don't understand the radio show. They don't understand. I mean, we do those things on Friday. We don't do those things on Tuesday, Robert. I mean, I know you're rooting for the Bears, but we do those things. Again, we do them on Friday. Yeah, no. There's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. One texter says, what do you actually expect them to say about Mike or the new staff? Well, but again, I don't expect them just to sit there and throw him under the bus all the time. And that's what it feels like they were doing. A lot of throwing under the bus. Again, when Harold Landry's sitting there saying like, oh yeah, guys, thank God it's so much better. That tells you, if you really liked Vrabel and they asked you a question about change and the new coaching staff and everything else, what everybody would tell you is everybody would say something like, they do things differently. That doesn't mean it's better. It just means it's different. And maybe we were in a spot where, we needed a little difference. One texter says, one thing I get from college football is the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly are learning that the hard way. I'm sorry, Lincoln Riley just won on Sunday? I don't know what you're talking about. Harold Landry is right, Alex says, about Mike Vrabel's arrogance. I think we can all agree about that. And ultimately, when it comes to getting better and getting bitter, Mike Vrabel is somebody who chose to get bitter and get angry at everybody that says, I don't think you're doing that right. I don't think Todd Downing's very good. I'll show you. That was kind of how those things work. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Speaking of Brian Callahan yesterday said something. He was asked a question. It's clear Paul's working on a story about this. But I actually think he's right. And the sentiment of the question, I actually think it's a little misplaced. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Let's talk Window Nation. That's right. I absolutely love Window Nation. They are the best. They will take great care of you. I can promise you that. Did you know that most of your home's cold AC this summer leaked through old windows? Well, with the nice weather that September is going to bring, it's time to replace them with the energy-efficient ones and save money this winter on your heat. Don't let it go. Call Window Nation. People are talking about Window Nation. I'm talking about Window Nation. Albert's talking about Window Nation. He said, hey, it's great value, great product, great customer service, and he highly recommends it. They've got over 20,000 five-star reviews on Google, and they're all about value. And again, I don't know these other window companies. Everybody's asking, what do you think? What do you this? What do you that? I don't know. I know Window Nation. And I know that Window Nation will take great care of you, and that Window Nation will take great care of anybody, period. I mean, I got no problem telling Trevor, hey, go use Window Nation. So take good care of their offer that they have right now when it comes to Window Nation. Buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 free. There is no limit on how much you could save, and 0 down, no interest or payments for 24 months. So give them a call right now, 866-90-NATION. That's 866-90-NATION, or visit windownation.com. Again, every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free, and 0 down, no interest or payments for 24 months. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So what I love about these press conferences, coaches do, players do, is that different people that ask different questions ask questions for different reasons. For instance, if a writer is working on a story, they will ask specifically about whatever it is they are trying to write about. Let's say Joe Rexrode at The Athletic is writing a story on Caleb Farley and about everything Caleb Farley went through and how Caleb Farley is going to try to get back in there and make a difference, whatever. I don't know. But he would ask questions in the press conference, even though everybody's thinking about the Chicago Bears and we're talking Chicago Bears and everything else, he'd ask about Caleb Farley. When it comes to people like me on the radio, when I ask questions about the opinions that I have or the things that we're going to debate. So like if I think that what are most of the questions I asked about during the offseason? Right tackle. And when it comes to the TV people, they get about 2 minutes and 30 seconds a newscast to talk about sports. And that's to fit everything that happened in sports in there in the 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And in some places, I think it might be a little different. Like I think that it might be a minute 30 now. It might be even less than that. I don't know. You'd have to ask Corey. I wouldn't be sure. And they'll ask questions like, Coach, how excited are you to get ready to prepare for the Bears? Well, we're very excited. This is a big test in week 1, and because they're going to stick that right in the newscast. So Paul is very clearly working on a story at paulkaharski.com about winning free agency. We're familiar with the whole winning free agency thing, right? Teams win free agency in March, and they sign a bunch of players. The Jets do this a lot. The Browns have done this a lot over the years. Different teams, they do it. And then it's, oh, man, look at what the Raiders did. Look at what Jacksonville did, adding Christian Kirk and all these other guys. And look at what they did with Calais Campbell. And then sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. And I don't know what stats and metrics Paul has to say either winning free agency does matter or winning free agency doesn't matter. Paul has said many times on record that he feels like the Titans for years lamented the fact that, hey, all these teams celebrate winning free agency, and that's not who's holding up the trophy at the end of the year. Because in the past, the Titans weren't always, big spenders. And so he asked Brian Callahan about winning free agency. And I know a lot of people are very, very excited because they say, Jared, we're so much better. Look at the players we've got. Look at what we've added. Snead and Awuzie and Pollard and Cushenberry and Ridley and Diggs and Adams and Ernest Jones now. It's like, Jared, this team's got to be that much better. But I don't think it's so much about winning free agency as what the point of free agency actually is. And this is what Brian Callahan had to say.
We see a lot of evidence that free agency winners in March and April are not necessarily big winners in December and January. This franchise has been very fond of saying that historically. What's different about this team being a big free agent winner this year in terms of how that's going to play out?
I think it was because I think we added quality players at a lot of positions. I don't know that we went out and did anything like it didn't feel crazy. I know it was a lot of money overall, but we had a lot of roster patchwork to make do with. And so I don't look at it necessarily maybe as winning free agency. I think we made our team better. And I think we have a young players in core spots too that are really important. And so it's going to be a mesh of those two things, but I don't look at it as a winning or losing free agency. I think we made our team better. It's going to give us a chance to be competitive.
They didn't win free agency. He says they made the team better. And while at first I thought, boy, that's a real politician answer, I actually think that that's the truth. That's the right approach. That's not what people around here feel, because I hear people, they come up to me and they say, Jared, how can you think that we won't be better than we were last year? I mean, look at all the players we've added. I mean, I remember when they signed guys like Ridley and Snead and Awuzie, and it was like, what do you think now, Jared? They're going to the Super Bowl. They're this, they're that. Even last week when they acquired Ernest Jones, I thought the response and the celebration about adding an inside backer, even though it looked on paper to be like a great trade, even I thought that was a little over the top. People around here think that those big names are going to transform the team. Here's the truth. And as is the case almost all the time between the we're going to the Super Bowl because of free agency and the Kansas City didn't win free agency, I bet we'll see them in the playoffs. The truth is somewhere in the middle. The Titans did what I believe teams have to do when they either miss on draft choices or trade draft choices. And that is, you have to buy what you lost in those drafts. And let's use L'Jarius Sneed as the example. L'Jarius Sneed was a 2020 draft pick. If the Kansas City Chiefs had signed L'Jarius Sneed to a contract, it would be similar to the contract that you signed L'Jarius Sneed to. Well, when I hear about, oh God, that 2020 draft was so bad and that's why the Titans suck, there is some truth to that. But L'Jarius Sneed replaces Christian Fulton. Because if Christian Fulton had been good, Christian Fulton would have wanted a top-of-the-market contract, and you would have had to give it to him. So L'Jarius Sneed, again, a 2020 draft choice, takes the spot of Christian Fulton. So now the Titans have L'Jarius Sneed. Lloyd Cushenberry was a 2020 draft choice. Again, you paid him. Isaiah Wilson didn't work, but you've replaced him with Lloyd Cushenberry in free agency. And you're paying Lloyd Cushenberry the kind of money that you would have been okay with paying a starting center or a starting tackle or whatever it may be. You would have been okay with this if Isaiah Wilson had panned out. At this point, Isaiah Wilson and Christian Fulton and all the Darrington Evans, those guys are all off their rookie contracts. Those guys would be on second deals. Tony Pollard. Now, he was a 2019 draft pick, but again, he's in that same age bracket. He replaces Darrington Evans. Calvin Ridley was drafted in 2018, the year that you missed on Rashaan Evans. Even Ernest Jones, he was in 2021, the year that you picked Caleb Farley, the year that you missed on Elijah Molden. So I've always said, when it comes to the draft and free agency, that when you don't have picks, and there are multiple reasons to not have picks. When you don't have picks, either you missed or you traded. The way that you make up for that is to either sell off some more of your own assets in order to get more picks, which is never a good idea. Or what's better is to go out and buy the picks that you need to replace the picks that you lost. The only place you lose in this is when it comes to the positions. You can't buy a top-of-the-line quarterback. And we learned this offseason. You can't buy a top-of-the-line tackle. And the other thing when it comes to free agency is you're going to pay top-of-the-market money, literally top of the market. You're going to pay top-of-the-market money for a probably middle-of-the-market player. Calvin Ridley, $23, $24 million a year. He is not the caliber of Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb. Lloyd Cushenberry is not the best center in the NFL. Mike McGlinchey last year, who was a right tackle that you probably should have signed. Mike McGlinchey last year signed for top of the market. He's not an all-pro right tackle. But that's the tax you pay in free agency. And you also can't get a quarterback because Joe Burrow doesn't go to free agency. But Brian Callahan's right. When it comes to this idea that, hey, did you win free agency this year? And what do you make of winning free agency and it equaling wins on the football field? And Brian Callahan says, it's not about, look, we had a team that had a bunch of holes, and we spent a bunch of money. Here's what's crazy. What's crazy about all of this when it comes to, again, free agency and the money and all that, it's not like the Titans have a top 5 payroll in the NFL. It's not like the Titans are up there with Cleveland and San Francisco and Philadelphia, and they're nowhere near those teams. They're a bottom half of the league payroll team. But because they didn't have anybody to pay in 2020, they didn't have anybody to pay in 2021, now that guys are starting to sign deals like Trevor Lawrence, like Jamar Chase wants to sign, now that they don't have anybody to sign from those two classes, and they didn't spend any money last year, the most expensive piece was Andre Dillard, and he's gone, thank God. And they let Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill walk. That's why they had all the money to go spend. And so, again, I don't know what Paul's story is going to say, and I'm not here discrediting Paul's story, saying it's not going to be true. I'm actually fascinated to read it because I think there's going to be a lot of teams over the years that spent a bunch of money in free agency who didn't win any games. And I think there's going to be some teams off the top of my head that spent a lot in free agency and turned their team around, i.e. the Jacksonville team in 2017 that went to the AFC title game. But at the same time, to me, the spending in free agency, that's not about trying to build a superstar team. This isn't the Red Sox and the Yankees from the early 2000s. This is about replacing what you didn't pay. You didn't pay Christian Fulton. You replaced it with L'Jarius Sneed. You didn't pay Isaiah Wilson. You replaced it with Lloyd Cushenberry. You didn't pay Darrington Evans. You replaced it with Tony Pollard. You didn't pay Monty Rice. You replaced it with Ernest Jones. That's where the Titans are at. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. A lot of you want to weigh in on this. Speaking of the Titans and free agency and who they went out and got, and there's one guy in particular who I want to see on Sunday, and I want to see a lot of on Sunday. And I think if you're going to win the game on Sunday, it might be because of this guy. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 here on 102.5-1063 The Game. And apparently the Titans have a little roster news. They have waived Luke Gifford. And you want to know why they've waived Luke Gifford, Ian?
Why is that?
Because I kept telling you guys before the start, when we were doing all the roster stuff, I'm like, he's making $2.5 million this year.
Too much for a special teamer?
I don't think they want to pay that. So here's what you do. Instead of waiving Luke Gifford last week when teams could, go out and get him, you waive him now while teams are putting their game plans in. They're too busy to think about what they're getting ready to do for week 1, and so they don't worry about it. You play against Chicago. Gifford would have been inactive anyways. You play against Chicago because Gifford's a fully vested veteran, and then you sign him before week 2, and his whole salary's not guaranteed. That's what I think the Titans are doing. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Stillman and Company, 102.5-1063 The Game. Speaking of the Titans and Sunday against Chicago, be sure to join us live out at Twin Peaks for the return of the pregame show.
Award-winning pregame show.
The award-winning pregame show. Be sure to join us. Me, Chris Sanders, Derek Mason. We, as a pregame show, we have two choices, folks. We can get better, or we can get bitter. I hope we get better. 9:30 to 11:30 for the pregame show, as it's the Titans and the Bears, live from Twin Peaks in Cool Springs. And the pregame show is presented by Sundeck Nashville and Parman Tractor and Equipment.
Back when you guys brought in Tony in free agency, was there a particular type of running back you were looking for to fit this system? And how good a fit has he been for what you wanted?
Perfect is probably the best way to put it. Between him and Tajay, they're exactly what we're looking for. They both have the ability to be kind of three-pronged players where they run it very, very well. They're very good in the pass game, and they can protect. And they do all three of those things at a very high level. And so I think we got two backs that I'm really excited to see and use. But they fit exactly what we're looking for in this particular brand of offense. And they both got explosive capabilities. They can both find lanes in the run game. They both run hard, even though they're not gigantic backs. They're big enough, and they run hard enough too, I guess is the best way to put it. They run with their pads behind them, and it's a good group. And they're going to be a huge part of our offensive success is how well those guys fit into the system. And like I said, they're both about as good as I could ask for a fit.
Brian, tell me about what Tony Pollard means to the Titans and this, that, and the other. Well, let me tell you, Tony and Tajay, they're going to be a big part of this. And we want to go to Tony, and we want to go to Tajay, and we want to use those guys, and we wanted this, and we wanted that, and we would no. Those are two separate people, Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. Those are two totally different people. I was not in favor of the Tajay Spears pick because I didn't think the Titans needed to use a third-round pick on a running back when they had Derrick Henry. And I was in favor of signing Tony Pollard until I saw the Titans ignore right tackle. And then I was like, wait a minute, $8 million for a running back. You don't have a right tackle. And you just drafted a running back in the third round. And so I'm going to say this. I got to separate all these different thoughts, which is, first, I'm all in on Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard last year had statistically probably the worst year of his career. Worst average in his career. Now, he still ran for 1,000 yards, but like Eddie George was running for 1,000 yards at the end, and Eddie was nothing like the Eddie of his prime. But he carried the ball more than he ever has. 250 carries last year for Tony Pollard, had 1,000 yards, catches the ball out of the backfield. But I am convinced, after seeing Tony Pollard in both the preseason and in training camp, I am convinced that Tony Pollard last year was recovering from the broken leg that he suffered in the playoff game at San Francisco when he was with Dallas. So at the end of the 2022 season, they played in Dallas in the playoffs. I don't know if you guys remember the end of the game, the Cowboys ran some for cock to play where Zeke snapped the ball to Dak Prescott in that game. And TD brought this up on the show last week. It was Aziz in San Francisco that broke Tony Pollard's leg. And last year, Tony Pollard was healthy, but Tony Pollard wasn't the same elite Tony Pollard that he had been at times in Dallas. And I think that was because Tony Pollard, like we see guys with ACLs, Tony Pollard was returning from the injury last year. Well, I think the Tony Pollard the Titans have is the Tony Pollard throughout the meat of his Cowboys tenure. And I don't think Tony Pollard's better than Derrick Henry. But I do think that Tony Pollard is good enough to win within the NFL as your lead back. So the main guy, like the guy that you point to and you're like, this guy, he's in. I do believe that Tony Pollard is good enough to do that you can turn around and you can hand him the ball 23 times and you can win. The same way I feel about Josh Jacobs, the same way I feel about, what's his name that was in Green Bay before Josh Jacobs? Aaron Jones. The same way I feel about those guys is how I feel about Tony Pollard. Again, not the same as Derrick, but that is how I feel. One thing that makes me nervous about the way the Titans talk about these guys is that every time they talk about Tony Pollard, it's always like, well, we got to mention Tajay Spears. This is going to be a 1-2 punch. And these guys, they're going to be equals and and I'm like, I don't want them to be equals. Because I don't think Tony Pollard or I don't think Tajay Spears can bang the ball up in the middle of the defense in the offensive line. I don't think he can run between the tackles the way Tony Pollard can. So I look at Spears and I'm like, Spears can run the ball, But Spears is more of a specialty back. You run some plays for him. You get him out in space. I think this new kickoff return, I'd stick him back there. Might happen, and you don't want something to happen to him, and he doesn't want to. I don't think about it like that. I think about it like I want Tony Pollard to be the lead back, and I want Tajay Spears to get the same amount of reps that he got last year behind Derrick Henry. And you're not going to like that. But that would be my game plan on Sunday at Chicago. Would be, hey, we're going in there, we're going to hand the ball to Tony Pollard. And of all the free agent signings the Titans have made, I think that's the one that gets overlooked because everybody knows Snead's starting. Everybody knows Awuzi's starting. Everybody knows Cushenberry's starting. Ridley's starting. Everybody knows that. With Pollard, it's like Pollard and Spears, he's coming in to be part of a duo, whereas, again, Snead's coming in to play every play. I don't think Pollard should be part of a duo. I think Pollard should be number one. And then if Pollard doesn't get the job done at Chicago, then we'll reevaluate. But I think Tony Pollard's the best player they have on offense. And I want the best player they have on offense to get the ball in his hands. And then, again, that takes me back to Spears. First of all, I also want to see some plays with Spears and Pollard together because, again, you get 5 eligible receivers, and I'd like to see the best 5 out there. But that's also why on this kick return, I want to see Spears. Because that's where he gets the running start. Their defense can't run. I mean, would it be crazy for a coach to put a bunch of big fat boys out there in front of Spears? So Spears catches it running kind of like arena football when you have the guy in motion who runs through and goes up there and you get guys blocking, and there goes Tajay Spears. That's what I see out of Spears. But as far as being the bell cow running back, Pollard. So I hate this whole well, hey, they're both going to be good. Okay, I hope so. But let's get the ball to Tony Pollard on Sunday. Phone line shared by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Andrew says, what do you think is the more likely scenario for the Titans this year? Number one, the Titans starting right tackle changes at least once due to poor performance. Or number two, Treylon Burks misses at least 5 games. That comes from Andrew. I mean, I think it's probably more likely that Burks misses 5 games. I hope nobody gets hurt, but I think it's more likely. I mean, who are you going to replace PT with if you were to replace him? One texter says, you rattled off a long list of John Robinson and Mike Vrabel busts when you discussed the Titans signings and free agency. You cannot bring yourself to admit that J-Rob, the holy cow, I think he means the sacred cow, J-Rob, the holy cow, was terrible after the Vrabel hire. Well, in 2019, they drafted 5 starters. So I don't think it was all after the Vrabel thing. But I will say, when it comes to the decisions that were made with the Titans, I mean, just because I didn't think John Robinson should be fired when he got fired, and I still think he's a good general manager, doesn't mean that I don't think he made mistakes. I mean, I think there were some massive, massive mistakes that were made. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Brian Callahan says Will Levis is built for this moment that he's getting. This opportunity that is facing Will Levis. Well, what else is he going to say? But what I think Brian Callahan really means. And it's not a bad thing. We will get to it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
How excited are you just to kind of see what this product looks like, and with Will at the controls kind of running the offense?
Oh, I can't wait. That's that part. I can't wait to see what our team is. You know, I think we've had glimpses of what I think we're capable of over the course of training camp in the preseason. And again, we haven't faced a starting NFL defense yet, and that's okay, other than our own and a little bit of Seattle. But I do think that that's the part that I'm looking forward to, is to see what we are. And that's the exciting part about every season, is you get a chance to learn. Your team's going to grow. It's going to change. And that's the fun process. That's the journey part of it that I enjoy the most. And we got ourselves a journey ahead of us. There's no doubt.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan talking about, hey, you know, we're excited. This is an exciting time. We're ready. We're this, we're that. And so I did laugh out loud, because if you listen to Terry's question, he asked about Levis, and he didn't answer anything about Levis. But good on Terry to circle back and ask him about Will Levis.
Seen from Will that tells you he's ready for this moment?
Everything he's done so far, he's ready for the moment. There's no question in my mind. He's going to have to play well for us, obviously, but just his demeanor, his confidence, his comfort with the offense, all of those things have shown that he's ready to go play football. And I can't wait to see it. And I'm excited for him too, to be able to show people how far he's come as well. So it's exciting for both of us in that regard.
Good job, Terry. He didn't want to answer the question at first. And so you say, pin him down on Levis, and he says, oh no, he's ready for this moment. You know, where he's at, I'm excited to go see him. I'm ready to go watch. I'm this, I'm that. What else is he going to say? At first, he didn't want to answer the question when it came to Levis. But then the second time he's asked it, he's 100% in. Again, can we get that first Terry question, where he clearly asks about Levis and Callahan doesn't answer it at all about Levis?
How excited are you just to kind of see what this product looks like, and with Will at the controls kind of running the offense?
Oh, I can't wait. That's that part. I can't wait to see what our team is. You know, I think we've had glimpses of what I think we're capable of over the course of training camp.
Again, he's like, well, I want to talk about the team. And then it's like, well, but he's asking about Levis. Like and I think Callahan knows that. I don't think what Callahan said is exactly what he feels, which is why we have to run it through our coach translator. So what did Brian Callahan mean when he said Will Levis was actually ready for the moment of the big game against the Bears on Sunday?
It's now or never. What are we supposed to do? Start Mason Rudolph? We're invested in Will, and we hope he'll prove he can do it.
Bingo. See, Brian Callahan right there gets up there and says, oh, no, he's ready for this moment. And everything he's done and the way he is about the offense and the this and the that, he's ready to go. He doesn't have a choice. Brian Callahan doesn't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I can tell you which, you know, I could argue either side of this when it comes to Levis, big picture and small picture. I could argue any side of this. The truth is, I don't know. I don't know if Levis is going to be the guy who takes that giant right arm he's got and his big, strong frame and his unbelievable work ethic and puts all that together with his desire to win and throws it out there into being a franchise quarterback, or if he's gonna be a guy who just never, ever makes it one way or another. Like, who knows? No one knows. He doesn't know. Here's what they want to see. It's the same thing you want to see on Sunday. You're going to sit down on the couch, you're going to turn the game on, and you're going to want to see what Levis can do. They're the same way. What they want to know is can Levis do what they ask of him originally? You know, that first offensive drive, it's going to be what they ask of him. Their game plan for the Chicago game is going to be what they ask of Levis. And then they're going to want to see, can he do what the game asks of him? And those are two totally different things. Again, I think in a perfect world, if I'm drawing up the offensive game plan, I want Levis to throw it 17 times. I want to run the ball with Tony Pollard, and then I want to run the ball with Tajay Spears. And I want to keep my defense on the sideline, and I want to be able to put pressure on Caleb Williams in his first start. I don't want to come out and just start throwing the ball all over the yard, though I know that's what you guys want to do. That's what the fantasy football people want to do. But then again, there's a difference between what I would ask Levis to do and what the game will ask Levis to do. Because if it's 21-0, Chicago, guy fumbles the ball here, they get the opening kickoff and they score. You get the ball and Levis gets sacked from behind and he fumbles the ball and they pick it up and they move right down and score. You punt to them, they kick a field goal, it's 17-0, and there's a minute and a half to go in the first quarter. Doesn't happen all the time, doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. Happened last year at Cleveland. It happened against Cleveland at home in 2020. I remember Derek fumbled the ball, and it was like, but again, when the game asks Levis, hey, 2-minute drill, you're up there at quarterback, go get it, go win the game. There's nothing Brian Callahan can do. You can't baby him at that point. At that point, he's got to go out there and he's got to go win the game. So again, this is what they're as excited to see on Sunday as you and I are excited to see on Sunday, whether or not he can do it. But all they're going to say is they're going to look at you and they're going to say, yeah, we think he's ready for it. Because anything else would be a massive story, and it would be a sign that the coaching staff has a lack of faith in the quarterback. And I can tell you right now, that's the last thing any coach wants ahead of week one. That would be like a hockey coach going to the podium during a playoff series and saying he doesn't have faith in his goalie. Be like a baseball manager saying, I don't really have faith in Johnny, but we're going to pitch him tomorrow in game 5 of the playoffs. They don't do that. And I wouldn't do that either. That would be like if we had a show on this station that just absolutely sucked. Now, let me state for the record, I don't think any of the shows we do have suck. But if we had a show that sucked, I mean, I wouldn't come on the air and say it sucked. I wouldn't do that. This is not the right place, not the right time, not the, And not only that, not only is it because, I'd have to deal with the ramifications of having said that, but it's the whole it's like, what's the positive in that? So he's not going to come out and say, well, let's see what Levis is all about. He's going to say, I believe. Because as we learned with the whole Mariota and Tannehill and Vrabel, and we all learned that once you stop believing, then they'll say, well, it wasn't his fault anyways. One texter says, John Robinson should have been fired after all those terrible decisions, not after those decisions were made to earn him an extension, then fire him. The amount of people that want to sit here and just, Ian, I don't get it. I understand the Vrabel stuff. I do not understand the amount of people that want to sit back and argue the Robinson firing.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who think J-Rob did nothing good at all for some reason.
And it's like they want to argue it. Again, I mean, the facts are in the guy's first draft, he hit 3 picks out of the park by drafting all pros in the first, second, and third round.
Sure, like every GM, he had good picks and he had bad picks.
Yeah, but like some of these GMs just have bad picks. Like Mike McCagnon of the Jets. Some of these guys just have bad seasons and losing records.
Oh, yeah. I mean, J-Rob, and for one thing that he did do that people, I guess, forget about, who fired Malarkey to want to hire Vrabel?
That was John Robinson.
And
you guys thought that was
a great move.
Popular choice.
And it worked out. And it took him to the next level. And so he made that choice. So, I mean, it wasn't just players. He hired Vrabel.
Well, Vrabel's not very popular. I don't know if you heard the first hour of this program. Vrabel is not
but it was
very
a good,
popular.
But it was a good
anymore.
decision to do.
I mean, my thing
as
again,
far as it led to results.
I actually not convinced that was that big of a deal. The hiring of Vrabel was, I don't think that was as big of a deal, but
I think it took him to the next level that Malarkey could not do.
I mean, they got to an AFC title game. Malarkey got him to the division round of the playoffs. Vrabel got him to an AFC title game.
And a number 1 seed.
Yeah.
I mean, they won 12 games, right?
A number 1 seed.
Malarkey wouldn't have
a
been able to
team
win
that
12,
was not,
12
you know,
games.
that had their problems. And I think
Yeah.
they had their problems in large part because of Todd Downing. And I think that was clearly a Vrabel thing. But again, my whole point is, like, when it comes to Robinson, he won 61% of his games. Like 61% of his games. You want me to say he sucked? He didn't suck. You can't suck if you win 61% of your games. You can't. This isn't college football where if you win 61% of your games at Auburn, but you never beat LSU or Alabama, you're fired. This is the NFL. I mean, the most average coach in the history of the NFL is in this team's Hall of Fame. What are we talking about here? One texter says, did the Chiefs know what would happen when they put Mahomes in year 2 after they let Alex Smith go? What's the difference between Brian Callahan knowing what Levis is about and what Mahomes and Andy Reid? Guys, that was an entire plan. An entire plan. Andy Reid did not inherit Patrick Mahomes. Andy Reid went out of his way to acquire Patrick Mahomes. And then Andy Reid sat Patrick Mahomes on the bench for an entire year to then develop Patrick Mahomes. Brian Callahan showed up. The owner said to Mike Keith the day she fired the previous coach, the owner said to the fans, we've got a good young quarterback. What does that mean? If you wanted the Carolina job, you had to say you could make it work with Bryce Young. If you wanted the Tennessee job, you had to make it sound like you could make it work with Will Levis. It is not remotely the same. Talking about, oh, they know this, that. Oh, my goodness gracious. Oh, some of you people are crazy, I'll tell you. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
7 or 8 months. Now that you finally come to game week, how do you balance still kind of building and putting your imprint versus we got a game to go play and win on Sunday?
You do both. There's no. We're in a production business and a winning business, and the goal and the idea of the plan is to go put one together that can go win, and we expect to go win, and there's really no other way to do it. And then you build the rest of it as you go, and it's a process that you live and learn. Guys grow, their communication gets better every time they play together. The more mistakes you have to fix, usually that means you're growing every time you're getting in that film room. So it's kind of two processes that like run congruently together. We're trying to win games and putting a plan together to go win, and we're still trying to build our football team and build the type of team that we want to be. So both processes are working at the same time.
That was Brian Callahan, and I bet you there is nobody that is more excited about the idea of actually getting out there and playing a game on Sunday than Brian Callahan. Because I'm sure he's, hey, how excited are you for the season? How excited are you for this? How excited are you for that? Are you ready to go with this? Are you ready to? And it's like, let's just play the game. Now, I know that those guys probably feel that way. If you don't win Sunday, then you'll probably wish you was back to the honeymoon period. But again, Ian, we all want to be optimistic around here. We want to believe that this team's going to win. And so then you won't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
That'd be nice.
For whatever that's worth.
A win would be cool.
Do any of you guys care about anything except for Vrabel and Callahan? I mean, excuse me, Vrabel and Robinson. Like, I'm dead serious about this. Do you guys, does anybody here care about anything except for those two? Because the text line is just loaded up with Vrabel and Robinson takes.
Everyone likes to live in the past.
That's not true, though. Like, I remember one time I was at a Christmas party years ago, and this guy that managed the digital stuff for 24/7 Sports told me. He said, nobody ever cares about what happened. Everybody always cares about what's next. And it reminded me of the day that Mike Mularkey got fired. You know, the Titans went on the road to New England. They lost in the divisional round of the playoffs. And so I was preparing to do a show that Monday about that loss in the divisional round of the playoffs. And then the next day, Mularkey had that press conference where he said Terry Robiskie was staying. And I was prepared to do a show the next day about Terry Robiskie staying on as offensive coordinator and what do people make of that and this, that. And then he got fired. And nobody even wanted to talk about whether or not he should be fired. Everybody wanted to talk about who the next coach was going to be. And it was like as soon as they fired him, nobody ever wanted to talk about him, never speak of his name. Nobody cares anymore ever, period, move on. Then I look at this, and it's all people saying, John Robinson did this, and Mike Vrabel did that. And one texter says, we picked Corey freaking Davis over Mahomes and McCaffrey. That was smart. By the way, I know people get really mad at me when I say this. I actually think the picking of Corey Davis was worse than the picking of Isaiah Wilson. And I've explained this 8 ways to Sunday. People don't listen to it because they're just like, Isaiah Wilson never played. He sucks. But missing on the 28th pick and missing on the 5th pick are two totally different things. Because when you have the 28th pick in a draft, you can't draft Mahomes. When you have a 28th pick in a draft, you can't draft the guys that went in the top half of that first round. And you got Corey Davis, who kind of was average at best when he was healthy. He was like a better version of Treylon Burks, but you drafted him higher than Treylon Burks. One texter says, yes, I would rather talk about the game. One texter says, I guess I'm in the minority, but I'm more worried about whether or not the Titans defense will generate more sacks than the offensive line gives up. Let me say this. We're in the early stage of the week. So we'll, again, dive more into what the Chicago Bears are supposed to do or not do. I'm not buying the Chicago Bears hype, by the way. Now, I don't want to say I lied to the audience because I didn't lie. I just didn't follow through on what it was I thought I was going to do. Does that count as a lie?
Maybe.
Like if I say I'm going to go work out today and I don't work out that day because either something got in the way or I'm a lazy fatty. Well,
if something comes up and gets in the way, hey, that's okay. Are we just going to be, not feeling up for it, that's something different.
So I said I was going to watch Hard Knocks this year because the Bears were on it and the Titans are playing the Bears week 1. I have not watched Hard Knocks yet. Have not even watched one episode of the Bears Hard Knocks.
I think we can let that slide.
Have you watched the Bears Hard Knocks at all?
I have not, no.
So I haven't watched the Bears on Hard Knocks, which I said I would do. I haven't done it. But tomorrow we really get into the deep dive on the Bears and everything else. And there's a part of me that's like, do I need to stay up tonight binge watching Bears Hard Knocks? Is Bears Hard Knocks, was it insightful at all? Did we tell you that kind of stuff?
I'm not really sure. I mean, we talked about you didn't like that Caleb Williams was using his handbag.
Yeah, I didn't like that he has a purse.
But I've heard it was okay.
Did you have anybody did you watch the Giants Hard Knocks, the offseason one?
No.
Did you hear, other than me, anybody talk about how much they like the Giants Hard Knocks?
Yeah, I think so.
Did you hear the same type of sentiment surrounding the Bears Hard Knocks?
Probably not, no.
Yeah, see, that's kind of my thing is like I haven't heard anyone that's like, oh, you have got to watch the Bears on Hard Knocks, which makes me think that it's kind of like every other training camp Hard Knocks, which is they follow around the number 1 draft pick. They follow around the coach. There's some, goofball on the coaching staff, Coach Ramrod, Coach Ramrod, he always gets into
He's so
them.
crazy.
Yeah. It's always tough as a coach during training camp. But for Coach Ramrod, it's a totally different discussion. And then there's always some undrafted rookie from Nowheresville Tech who is trying to make the team, who usually gets cut like the last week of the year. And they show the coaches yelling at him all the time. Usually it's Coach Ramrod, who blows the whistle and starts yelling, Johnny Johnson, get back in at linebacker. You got to get back to that spot. Yeah, it's tough being away from my girlfriend for the first time and my parents for the first time. And I'm staying in this dinky hotel and Coach Ramrod's on my ass all day. And that's usually what it is. So again, but I did say I'd watch it and I haven't watched it. But as far as the defense is concerned, guys, if the defense doesn't play well, you will lose, period. And I don't care who we're talking about, whether it's the Bears or whether it's the Patriots. If your defense does not play well in a game, you will lose, period. This offense is not ready to go out and to win a 45-43 game. They are not. So when you're like, I hope the defense can get more sacks, and I think that if they can't, you lose. This defense has got to hold Chicago under 20 points. If they hold Chicago under 20 points, you got a shot. If they allow 21, you're going to lose. And I'm going to say that all week because it's true. Chase says it's not a purse, it's a satchel. Alan from The Hangover. Yes. By the way, I never thought that movie was that funny. I thought that movie was funny.
The first one's kind of funny.
That movie was so funny. Oh my God. Like everybody else did when it came out. Maybe that's my problem. I don't know.
There's funnier of that kind of ilk, than Hangover, but old school Wedding Crashers, much more fun.
One texter says, Jared, you have watched the Bears Hard Knocks because that's mostly what you just summarized so far. Coach Ramrod? Where did I get that from? I know that I didn't make that up. That Coach Ramrod. I know that's from something.
Super Troopers.
I do know that, but I don't think that's where I got it from. Though that is what I thought of, old Farva. But still, like, whatever. 615-737-1025. I'm proud. I'm very proud. I'm proud of somebody whose team I don't necessarily root for, but who personally I do root for. And I'm proud of what they did in order to get there. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. I try to take the fandom out of my personal feelings and my analysis as much as possible. But over the years, they've kind of morphed together. The analysis is my personal feelings on pretty much a daily basis. And it works in local radio because in local radio, I'm a fan of the teams that you guys care about. So when I'm mad that the Titans did something that I disagree with, it's because I think it will hurt them from winning. All I ever care about is what's in the best interest of the Titans winning to a certain extent. Like there are some dudes that I don't want on my football team. And if I have to lose without them, I'd rather do that than win with them because they're just pieces of you know what. But for the most part, it's all about the winning and the losing. Now, I grew up a Vanderbilt fan, but that does not mean that I am currently a Vanderbilt fan. I don't go out of my way to watch Vandy baseball. I only watch Vandy basketball now if there's nothing else on TV or if they're good, which lately they haven't been. So it's really only been in case there's nothing else on TV. And Vandy football, I hate to say it, I had lost all faith in. As much as I like the coach, and I like the coach, they won 5 games in 2022. They beat the 4th overall draft pick, Anthony Richardson, and they beat Will Levis in Lexington. They had a quarterback going into 2023, A.J. Swan, who ended 2022 as their starting quarterback and looked like he could be not the next Jay Cutler, but maybe the next Jordan Rodgers. I was excited for Vandy's football season last year. I went to practice once. I mean, again, I consider Clark Lee a friend. I think he's a very good man. I think he's a good coach. I was excited for the season. And then all of a sudden, game by game, it was just one disaster after another. I mean, they barely beat Hawaii that first week. Then they got beat by Wake Forest, and they couldn't manage the clock at UNLV. Next thing you know, Vanderbilt's 2-10. 2-10 in year 3 in the SEC. Anywhere else, that gets you fired. Billy Napier's in year 3 in the SEC. Surely, he's going to win more than 2 games. But almost no matter what he does, short of running the table, is probably going to get Billy Napier fired. And Billy Napier, by the way, and I'm not copping for Billy Napier. I think he's a bum. But Billy Napier has a tougher schedule than Vandy had last year. And so after the 2-10 season, and after half the team hit the transfer portal, I sat here kind of sad about where this was headed for Clark Lee. And I remember when Clark Lee got hired. He was the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. Notre Dame had made the college football playoff in 2020. Derek Mason had been out. Clark Lee, I remember when Clark Lee played. And Clark Lee got the job. And I remember Gentry Estes wrote in the Tennessean, Clark Lee is a home run hire for Vandy. And this was before I was friends with Gentry and would just pick up the phone and call Gentry and say, what is the matter with that? But I did say to Gentry, that's not a home run hire. That is a typical move. Guy played at the school. Guy's one of the coordinators of one of the top schools. Now you get to go be head coach. If Oregon wins the national championship this year, which after Saturday against Idaho, it ain't looking good. But if Oregon wins the national championship, my buddy Will Stein, the offensive coordinator, he's going to get a head coaching job somewhere. And it's going to be a Power 5 job because that's what happens. But over the years, I've gotten to know Clark. And I've gotten to know what Clark's about. First, it was a celebrity softball game I played in years ago, and he was the coach. And he and I just sat in the dugout, and we just talked ball and talked philosophy and everything else. And I walked away from that, and I was like, this guy gets it. I even said to Clark that night in the celebrity softball game, I said, I don't know if you're going to be the guy that does this. Like, I don't know if you're going to be able to win at Vandy. but I know that you understand the challenge that's in front of you. And then when they won 5 games in year 2, I thought, see, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy's smart. He gets it. And they got a shot to be solid, which is the best Vandy can ask for. And then 2-10. And then all those guys transferred. And Vandy had a restructuring plan last year that would make the Titans blush in terms of how he just changed the program. Now, all of a sudden, he's running the defense. Now, all of a sudden, Jerry Kill is in there running the offense. Tim Beck's calling the plays. Diego Pavia, dog, is playing quarterback. Chris Sanders says it all the time. You got 2 choices. You either get better, you can get bitter. Clark Lee could have looked at 2-10 last year, and he could have said, this organization is not giving me what I need to win. The renovations on the stadium are a disaster. They make us look terrible. I mean, we're playing in the SEC. We got Texas this year. We got Alabama this year. What am I supposed to do? He could have doubled down on it and said, no. I went to Vanderbilt. I'm smart. I coached at Notre Dame. I know what I'm doing. Last year was a fluke. We're going to do things my way because I know my way works. And he didn't. He tore it down to the studs and said, hey, we have to look in the mirror. And I will say this, on Friday, I talked about this all day when our college football preview show Friday, and I said, I'm nervous for Clark because I looked at their schedule. They were double-digit dogs to Virginia Tech. They were double-digit dogs. And I looked at the schedule, and I saw Alcorn State and Georgia State, and there's some other Scarbini State in there mixed in. But outside of that, I'm like, I don't know if you go to Lexington and beat Kentucky. You ain't beating Texas. You ain't beating Tennessee. Like, again, I'm rooting for Clark because he's a good man. And I think he's smart, and I think he's a good coach, and I think he's a good guy. But rooting for somebody and betting on them are 2 totally different things. And after last year, I didn't like – every coach has a reorganization plan when their feet are up being held up against the fire. I remember when Derek Dooley went out and got Sal Sunseri because his feet were being held up against the fire. But I'll be damned if that wasn't a different team on the football field on Saturday. That was a team. That was a team that was tough. That was a team that no matter what punch Virginia Tech threw at them, and I have no idea if Virginia Tech is any good. My gut would tell me they're probably not. But I have no idea if they're any good or not. But every time Virginia Tech threw a body shot to Vanderbilt, they got up and they responded. And this Diego Pavia, he is a star. I mean, I think this guy is awesome. I think there's going to be schools around the SEC that look at Diego Pavia and they say, Lord, I wish this was our quarterback. A buddy of mine who's a big gambler, he told me that Pavia last year at New Mexico State was 13-0 against the spread. I don't know if that's true. That's just what he told me. That's pretty impressive. But I have watched Vandy football for 30 years. And again, 3 years ago, I said to Clark Lee, I don't know if you can be the guy that does this because there's part of me that thinks it can't be done. But I think you're smart enough to know that this is different. And as much as I was rooting for him, I was kind of the opinion that, you know what? He's just not good enough because it takes, I don't know if Nick Saban could win at Vanderbilt, but it takes that. And Clark said no. Talk about finding a way. You know, when the players get put out on the field and the game's on the line, and no matter what the coach has taught them, it's ultimately up to the player to go out there and do it. That's kind of the secret in all of this. We pay the coaches $1 gazillion, and yet at the end of the day, it's all about the players, which is why recruiting is the coach's job. Getting the right guys in the locker room is the coach's job. Getting the right assistant coaches to teach those players what to do is the coach's job. And I got to give Clark Lee full marks. Clark didn't sit there. If you've ever met Clark Lee, you know this is one of the most meticulous and thoughtful people on the planet. There is no way that Clark did not spend years writing up what his plan for Vandy football was. And there is no doubt in my mind, after 2-10 last year, he tore it up. That he walked right up to it and he just ripped it up because it wasn't working. And I appreciate when the good guy wins. And I appreciate when good things happen to the right guy for doing the right thing. And with Clark and what he did for Vandy football, my gut almost just fell on Saturday. And again, I know I grew up rooting for Vandy. I don't care if Vandy wins or not. I really don't. But it's good for the station. They're our partner. We love them, whatever. But again, I'm a Louisville fan. But when I saw that kicker miss that 43-yard kick for Vanderbilt to win the game, my gut just sunk because I said to myself, oh, God. Clark's going to get criticized for the fact that he kind of tried to set up the field goal. The kid had hit from 54 earlier in the game. So I understand it. I wouldn't have done that. I would have tried to get closer. And I just knew Vandy was going to lose when that happened. And so when they won and they stopped Virginia Tech on that 4th down, I jumped for joy. My Canadian girlfriend couldn't give a rat's ass about Vandy football. But I jumped for joy because I was so happy for Clark Lee. And Diego Pavia, who I don't know, but he's a dog. We probably need to get Diego on the show at some point here. But again, I was so happy because Clark deserved it. And I hope this continues in the future for Vandy football. But then when I woke up this morning and saw that they are the cheesiest team of the week, I said, way to go, Vandy. Get your due, Vanderbilt. But really, congratulations to Clark. Because he made the kind of choices that a leader has to make in order to win that most guys might be too prideful to make. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I am very happy for Clark. But Clark ain't the real star of what went down Saturday. Ian, did you watch a game Saturday?
Which one?
Vandy.
A little.
How about that quarterback?
He looks pretty good.
Let's get to that next. 615-737-1025, Stillman & Company. And then I got a bunch of other college thoughts we'll get to. 1025, 1063 The Game.
Levis leads the quarterback. He calls for the snap. He drops back. He's got a pocket. He waits. There's pressure. He steps up at the 20. He throws toward the end zone. It is incomplete. Vandy wins 34-27. The Doors knock off the Hokies. Virginia Tech back to Blacksburg, gripping their pillows tight. Virginia Tech falls at the hands of the Doors. Vanderbilt 1-0 to start off 2024. What a game here at the Bay.
The biggest compliment I can pay him, and I speak on behalf of the team when I say this, is when the ball is in his hands, you're never out of the fight. We say in this program, belief is a practice. And that means that your actions, no matter your circumstances, should reflect the deep belief you have that you're going to come out with a positive outcome. And Diego embodies that in everything he does. So whether it's the way he trains, whether it's, the way he studies film, certainly the way he competes in practice. And obviously today we saw a warrior out on the field that was going to put the game on his back.
How about Diego Pavia on Saturday against Virginia Tech? And I was shocked yesterday when I got the email. I'm on the email list of all the teams in town. So whenever the Predators debut the ice going down at the arena, I get the email, which I'm not complaining about. Email me more, not less. But I'm on all the emails. So when Vandy's cross-country team finishes 6th, I get the email. And yesterday, I got the email that Diego Pavia was named SEC Offensive Player of the Week. And I was kind of stunned by that. And I'll tell you why I was a little stunned. I was a little stunned because, a lot of guys in the SEC had good weeks, and there were a lot of big games in the SEC. I mean, surely Georgia would have a guy worth discussing after they routed Clemson. And Alabama and Tennessee beat the ever-living crap out of their terrible opponents that they played. No disrespect to them, Western and Chattanooga. But, Alabama horsed them. And then Jackson Dart, he lit up some awful team. And so I'm sitting here thinking, those guys have bigger names. Jackson Dart, that's a big name. Jalen Milroe in Alabama, those are big names. Nico threw for 300 yards and a half. Georgia, they're the number 1 team in the country. They won the biggest game that people were watching. Surely one of the more popular players or one of the more popular schools would get the SEC Player of the Week. And so when that went to Diego Pavia for what he did, I got to be honest with you, I was really happy for him in Vanderbilt because I felt like they got their just due. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'd never heard of Diego Pavia until Saturday. I had heard of him, but knowing anything about him, nothing. And this is my theory on the transfer portal. Now, I know Cam Ward was the number 1 transfer portal quarterback, and he went out and lit up Florida. So I'm not saying that just because somebody is high on the transfer portal list doesn't mean that they're going to be good, because Cam Ward was good for Miami on Saturday. But do you think if you went to Florida State and you said before the start of the season, would you rather have Diego Pavia or DJ Uiagalelei, that they would have said Diego Pavia? Diego Pavia is 1,000 times better than DJ Uiagalelei. Uiagalelei sucks. Merritt's the quarterback at Florida. He's in his 6th year. He sucks. And Vandy, of all schools, has this dude who I think, again, that Clark Lee cut that we played right there, it perfectly encapsulates what Diego Pavia was to me watching him play on Saturday, which was, give me the ball, guys, and get out of the way. That's some superstar stuff right there. That's some Derrick Henry stuff. That's how Derrick Henry wins a national title with Jacob Coker as a starting quarterback. Because it's guys, give me the ball and get out of the way. And even after they missed the field goal, I said Pavia has to go win the game. And Pavia won the game. Now, I'm not sure how much I'm going to care about Vandy playing Alcorn State this weekend. I'm sorry. But I do know that when they play SEC games, I think their first is Missouri, who's a top 10 team right now. I want to see that kid play because that kid's got some game. And look, Jay Cutler went high in the draft and did win some games as a quarterback at Vanderbilt and did go on the road and beat UT. But not even Jay Cutler was the kind of college player that was like, give me the ball and get out of the way. And that's what Pavia was against a real team on Saturday against Virginia Tech. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Ricky's mad on the text line, Ian.
What happened this time?
He says, are we really wasting all day talking Vandy football? Do better, Stillman.
All day?
First of all, Vandy is the team of the week across the country. Pavia is the SEC Offensive Player of the Week across the entire conference, which represents, although it was a bad weekend for the SEC,
Not
the
great.
best conference in football.
Kirk Herbstreit. Here are my top performing coaches from week 1. Number 1, Clark Lee.
Hey, atta baby, Herbie. Atta baby. I mean, I was watching the McAfee show today, and McAfee had Herbie on his show, and McAfee was like, we got to talk about Pavia at Vanderbilt because Pavia is a dude. Guys, this, like, Vandy's got a dude at quarterback. Vanderbilt through one game. I know it's one game, but Vandy's got a quarterback who is must-see TV after one game. You know those kind of players where it's like, holy crap, I got to watch it. I got to watch this guy play. Like, I've got to watch this guy. That's what he is. Andrew says, Pavia is an example of guys get on my back. I won't let us lose. It was damn impressive, he says. Robert in Spring Hill says, one of the things that's not being talked about in the Vanderbilt-Virginia Tech game is how impressive Vanderbilt's offensive line looked and how impressive their defensive line looked for the first time in a very long time. If that line on both sides of the ball was pushing people around, which was a big reason why they were able to move the ball so well. I mean, the defense got turnovers. They held when they had to. Although, I'm sorry, can I criticize a coach I don't even know? This coach at Virginia Tech, I guess he was James Franklin's defensive coordinator, which would make sense how this guy knows nothing about strategy. Although, Coach Shoop, if you're listening, you know I love you. I'm not talking about you. But, again, their quarterback got hurt, and he couldn't play the start of overtime. They run 2 downs with the backup quarterback, and then they put in the hurt quarterback, and they run an RPO for the hurt quarterback? Boy, I thought that was stupid. One texter said most of the SEC games weren't real. The state of Tennessee paid itself $550,000 to let the Vols utterly humiliate some kids for the delight of the great grunting hillbillies of Tennessee who never went to college but have a big orange T on the front license plate holder. Man, you guys are reckless. Woo. Ben says we should be talking about the teams that can win the Natty realistically. I mean, okay. LSU didn't play well on Saturday. What do you think? Billy Napier's getting fired. What do you think? Pete says Pavia is better than Nico. I am not going to lie to anybody out there. I did not watch Tennessee on Saturday because I didn't feel like I had to. I did not feel like I needed to watch Tennessee beat the ever-living crap out of Chattanooga. Now, Robbie Stanley, you know he can't go 5 minutes without watching the Vols. I remember last year, Alabama played Texas. Remember that game in Tuscaloosa where Texas just went in there and smoked them with A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy? And Tavondre Sweat? Texas, everybody's watching that game. It's like the game of the season, Texas and Alabama. And Tennessee was playing, it might have been, honestly, Austin Peay. I can't remember who they were playing. They were playing somebody who stinks. And it was on ESPN Plus, and everybody was watching Alabama, Texas. And I got Robbie Stanley tweeting out about how mad he is about how the Vols are playing. So I kept up with Robbie's Twitter on Saturday, and apparently Nico looked like Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow mixed into one.
He's going to win the Heisman, yep.
Like Josh from Love Island, who literally looks like if you were to put Mahomes and Burrow together, this guy on Love Island looks exactly like him, and he gets the hottest girl.
Interesting.
And I don't think the combination of Burrow and Mahomes together is the, I wouldn't say that's the prettiest person in the world, but again, apparently he got the hottest girl on the show. So what do I know about it? But again, that's apparently what Nico looked like. I have no idea. I will be watching Nico on Saturday when they play a real game against a real team. 615-737-1025. Trevor will join us next here on the program. Trevor's thoughts from week 1 of the college season, and then we'll hit the Titans with Trevor as well. So we got a loaded Trevor Maddich to get to, and of course, we'll do it next. First, I want to tell you about the FanDuel Sportsbook app. You have heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook and my official sportsbook app. Well, they have something a little different for you because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to download America's #1 sportsbook app. That's FanDuel.com/JGM here on the program. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. Full price of NFL Sunday Ticket will be automatically charged seasonally after free trial. No refund. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Many people like the last segment we had where somehow I don't even know what I said about Love Island other than I made some reference to Love Island. I don't even know what I said, but apparently a lot of people like that. I guess that must be relatable in one way or another. What a week 1, though, of college football we had. First of all, it was not a good weekend for the SEC. And Billy Napier yesterday, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Billy Napier did what no coach should ever do, and he criticized the fans. He came out and talked about how we need to focus on what we can do to get better and not worry about what some hillbilly in rural Florida is thinking about on social media.
In their basement.
I said, oh, dear God. When the coach goes after social media, it's like you already know. And now there are people on Twitter that are literally, hey, a flight arrived in Gainesville from Teterboro, which is the charter port of New York. a flight or ride from Gainesville from Teterboro, and then a flight from Gainesville went to Oxford, Mississippi. And I mean, that's where we're at. So it was a bad week. Trevor Maddox joins us now on the program here. Oh, and by the way, Caroline says Brian Kelly's not on the hot seat yet after they lost, even though they won a bunch of games last year in the Heisman Trophy and everything else. Trevor joins us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, I want to start on the SEC Offensive Player of the Week, Diego Pavia. And I want to start on the cheesiest team of the week, the Vanderbilt Commodores, in week 1 of the college football season. Trevor, do you think that this is a nice bright spot for Vandy football and we'll all forget about it, eventually when they start playing more SEC games? Or do you think that Vandy's got something worth cooking over here?
Well, for now, it is raining crackers, isn't it? I mean, right now, I don't think the Vanderbilt Nation is really thinking about the future, because no, they're not going to go out and, going to a bowl game would even be tough this year, although it's possible with this win that they could get there. They'd have to steal a couple of wins. But when you've got a quarterback like Diego Pavia, you can steal wins.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just that, okay, he can throw, he can run. I mean, he had 104 yards rushing. He was Vanderbilt's leading rusher in addition to throwing the ball efficiently. But it's his leadership. With less than 5 minutes to go, Virginia Tech scored a touchdown to go up 27-20. So Vandy gets the ball with 4 minutes to go on their own 30, and all Pavia does is lead them down for the game-tying touchdown pass, and then leads them to victory in overtime. And so, I mean, that kind of leadership gives belief to a team that for a long, long time hasn't had any reason to believe at all. And he is so dynamic. I loved him in New Mexico State last year. I mean, they beat Auburn last year, right? Diego Pavia was the quarterback. So it makes you wonder. I mean, he's doing pretty good against the SEC. Seems like he's 2-0 the last 2 years against the SEC and ACC. So that's a good thing. But Pavia is the kind of guy that Vanderbilt needs, because he can put a team on his back and make plays that aren't there to help compensate for holes in other places in the roster until those holes can be filled. Oh, and the other thing, by the way, let me say this, is that when you got a guy like him, it creates a great atmosphere around the program for recruiting, and from a standpoint of him being there, I'm not sure what year he is, if he's going to be there this year or next year too. But when recruits come in, he'll tell them, look, guys, I transferred here. I loved it. You guys will love it too. And that carries a lot of weight. And it's been a while since they've had a guy quite like that.
Trevor, how much do you look at Clark Lee? And given the fact that they were 2-10 last year, and he basically ripped up his entire plan for the program, whole new offensive staff led by Jerry Kill. He's taking over the defense. They go get Pavia. They go spend NIL money. I mean, how much of this is Clark Lee really looked in the mirror and made necessary changes, and how much of this is, hey, it was one game, let's not put the cart before the horse here?
Well, we don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I think that him making such wholesale changes is not necessarily Coach Lee looking at himself in the mirror, but rather looking at the program, having learned it well, having learned what the needs are, and then going in and matching those needs with a new style and a new group of coaches on offense, et cetera. And I think that is important. And it's not because Clark Lee all of a sudden became humble. I think he's a good guy, and he is not an arrogant man. And I don't think he just got humbled and therefore had to do something different. I think he accurately saw what the needs of the program were in the moment, and was not afraid to go out and pull the trigger, even though it would have been hard to do because of relationships with coaches that he had developed. So I think Clark Lee is the man for that place. I think that was a fantastic hire for Vanderbilt, because coming out of Notre Dame as a defensive coordinator, he could have gone anywhere. He could have waited at Notre Dame and gone anywhere he wanted to go. He was one of the hot coordinators that was becoming in demand, and he chose to come to Vanderbilt. And so I think Vanderbilt is doing well to support him, and I hope the administration comes around to an SEC level of support for him, because he is the right coach.
I think they have. I think that's how you get Diego Pavia. Trevor with us on the program. The SEC. Georgia won which was good. Florida did not. A&M did not. LSU did not. Trevor, I don't think it was a very good week for the Southeastern Conference. I don't care about what Alabama and Tennessee and those teams did against nobodies. I don't think it was a very good week outside of Vanderbilt for the Southeastern Conference and Georgia for the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah, what would have been better if Texas A&M were able to hold on against Notre Dame.
I know, but A&M, Notre Dame did not
plays.
impress me, Trevor. And A&M, ever since Johnny Football, I feel like every quarterback they've had is never good enough.
Well, part of that, too, is ever since Johnny Football, every quarterback has been asked to do too much. Johnny Football was Kevin Sumlin but as coach. But under Jimbo Fisher, his system required a lot from the quarterback, an NFL quantity of information processing. And in the NFL, that's fine because you've got them, 40 hours a week in practice, and you can have those guys for many years beyond what college football. They only have 4 years of eligibility, whereas in college you only get 20 hours a week for everything football related. So that means practice, meetings, everything else. And so it's hard for quarterbacks to learn that much unless you're a Joe Burrow style guy like LSU had. And so that was a problem there. They were overloaded with information. I think Connor Wegman is going to be a good quarterback for them. Last year, before he got hurt at the end of September, he was 4th in the nation in QBR. He was one of the highest rated quarterbacks in terms of his stats before he got hurt. And so he just needs to stay healthy. And that defense that he faced against Notre Dame is one of the best in the nation. So, he struggled, but then again, Notre Dame struggled too. And it was just a couple of plays that broke for the Irish. And that would have been better for the SEC, clearly, if Texas A&M had won that. But to me, the big bell cow game for the SEC was the Georgia game because Clemson was desperate. Clemson knew what was being said about them, that they couldn't win in this age of the portal when their coach didn't want to bring in transfers, that their best days were behind them, that, yes, they had a good defense, but their offense can't play. So here they face Georgia. And in the first half, Georgia, being down their top 2 running backs because of suspension and injury, their offense didn't have any sync, any rhythm. And they were only up 6-0 on 2 field goals. Well, then what does Georgia do? Their young running backs, Nate Frazier, a true freshman out of Compton, California, he was fantastic in the second half. They kind of got used to the speed and poured it on and blew out what legitimately is one of the best defenses in the nation. And I think Georgia coming together on both sides of the ball the way they did, especially in the second half, is, vintage SEC. And because of the quality of the Clemson team, and I think we're going to find over the course of the season that Clemson's a good team. They're not a great team, but they're a good team. And I think that was the bell cow moment for the SEC this weekend.
Trevor, one of your colleagues, Dan Mullen, retweeted another one of your colleagues, Matt Berry, criticizing Florida for having dumped Dan Mullen, given that Billy Napier is clearly not that dude. What is about to happen in Gainesville?
Well, they are going to have a problem because yeah. Well, the thing is, Billy Napier had a lot to rebuild, losses in the portal, et cetera, over the last couple of years, but 2 losing seasons in a row, not good. And this year, of course, famously their schedule is, thought of as the most difficult in college football. They'll probably lose 5 of their last 6 games. And so beating Miami, not only to get a win to try to get to a bowl game, but for the state bragging rights, et cetera, was a huge deal. And not only did they lose, they got dominated at the line of scrimmage. Now, I get it that Cam Ward, quarterback for Miami, who transferred in from Washington State, he was a huge upgrade at the quarterback position for Miami. But what also happened is that Miami's offensive and defensive lines under head coach Mario Cristobal got better and better to where in the opener against Florida, they dominated the Gators on both sides of the line of scrimmage, and that's the worst thing. Now, I can see that maybe their young hotshot quarterback, DJ Lagway, not really ready to play yet, but they might put him in. Their starter, Graham Mertz, had to leave the game in the concussion protocol. But what might keep Billy Napier there for another year is if they play Lagway and the administration decides that there's enough hope there that they will give him another year to coach that kid.
Trevor, how much of Florida State's problems are DJ Uiagalelei related, and how much of them are Florida State's problems?
DJ Uiagalelei, quarterback at Clemson, didn't pan out there, transferred to Oregon State last year, played better there, completed 57% of his passes, not that great, but he accomplished what they asked him to accomplish. Now Florida State, and his problem is that he has not shown the ability to elevate a team beyond what the team could do without him anyway. In other words, he's good enough to take the team where it's good enough to go. But unlike Diego Pavia, if there are holes in the roster, he's not good enough with his play to elevate the team beyond that. And this team has some holes in the roster, it turns out, certainly in their performance. I mean, they lost a couple of really good receivers to the NFL off of last year's team, but they brought in some transfers that are really talented and have some homegrown youth at the receiver position that should have been more effective than they were in the first two games, both losses for Florida State. The offensive line had a lot of experience returning, and I thought that would be one of the best offensive lines in the ACC. The last two games against Georgia Tech and Boston College, the Florida State offensive line got manhandled. The defensive line lost some studs to the NFL, but they brought in some studs from the transfer portal, and they got manhandled 2 weeks in a row. They couldn't stop the run against Georgia Tech or Boston College. They just got pushed around. So DJ Uiagalelei is a problem because he's not able to elevate the team beyond the things that they could do anyway. But the things that they can do anyway right now are completely inadequate because so far they have shown that they are inadequate on both sides of the line of scrimmage, which I never thought I'd say coming into this season.
Last college thought for you, Trevor Maddich with us on the program. If I was king of Clemson, I'd fire Dabo at the end of the year. He, to me, just is not interested in what it takes to win anymore, and he's not going to be. And I'm sure they've got some kind of ridiculous buyout so they can't do it, but his time has passed. I am done with Dabo. Is that a hot take?
That's a super hot take. It's a steaming hot take. A lot of people agree with you, maybe most. I see it differently. I wouldn't be surprised if in 4 or 5 years we see that Dabo actually has the last laugh. The reason is he just doesn't want to bring in transfers. And most coaches have decided either that they want to bring in a few transfers to finish out the roster, or if you're Deion Sanders in Colorado,
Trevor, wouldn't that be like if you were a radio host? Would that be like if you were a radio host in Nashville and it's like, he's a good radio host, he just doesn't want to talk about the Titans? It's like, well, guess what?
No.
Like, I hate to break it to you, but you ain't going to be very good if you do that.
No, because that's not what he's doing. I don't know that that's an apples to apples thing, because what he's saying is the better way to develop a program for the long term is to bring in high school recruits, develop them, and have them playing for you for several years. He doesn't bring in transfers, but he doesn't lose very many either. And having that culture and the experience, et cetera, will ultimately allow them to be more successful and occasionally rise up to compete for a conference and national championship. Well, right now that hasn't been working very well, but that's not to say that it won't.
It won't.
So I'm not ready to write him off yet, because culture is something, and we don't really know the full ramifications yet of bringing in a whole lot of transfers. We saw Florida State brought in a really bunch of outstanding transfers on both sides of the ball, and so far it's been a miserable flop.
True. Trevor's with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. Trevor's thoughts on the Titans ahead of the tell anybody who asks, hey, you've got to go to Window Nation. And I don't know about the other companies. They all want your business. I get it. But I know Window Nation is a reputable company. I trust them. I send my friends to Window Nation, and I am sending you to Window Nation. And Window Nation is all about value. And did you know that right now you can buy 2 windows and you'll get 2 windows free? That's right. For every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 free. There's no limit on how much you can save. Plus, 0 down, no interest, and no payments for 24 months. 0 down, no interest or payments for 24 months. Get that schedule, the fast, no obligation in-home estimate right now with the pros at Window Nation by calling 866-90NATION or visiting windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION, windownation.com. Stillman and Company, we are joined by Trevor Maddich, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, the Titans get underway with the Bears on Sunday. They are one of the biggest underdogs of the week. But don't tell anybody around here that, because everybody here thinks the Titans are good. So, are you buying what most of the country believes, or are you buying what most of the city believes?
I'm closer to the city than the rest of the country. I think the Titans are dramatically improved, and they've got some matchup advantages here as well. The Bears, if there's a weakness on that team, it's their offensive line. Now they've got the capability to come together, but they're just not that good. They haven't been, and they didn't do a whole lot to improve it. And so I think that the pass rush has a chance to cause trouble, especially because it won't just be the down lineman rushing. It'll be blitzes coming from every angle and coming fast. And that's hard for offensive linemen if you're not that good and if you're wondering what to do to pick up. And so I think there's a good chance they'll get a lot of pressure on Caleb Williams, the Bears quarterback, although they have to be careful he doesn't break out of the pocket. Because with him, because he's a rookie, they need to make sure he stays in the pocket and has to play an NFL game instead of escaping the pocket and running around like Patrick Mahomes and extending plays and making it a playground thing. So, I think that's going to be the defense's biggest advantage and their biggest task is to make Caleb Williams beat them with his arm in the pocket. But they can keep him there and they can pressure him there because I think the Titans' pass rush is better than the Bears' pass protection.
Trevor, if you were a betting man and you had to bet on either the rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams, in his first game, and obviously what you know of Caleb from USC, or a rookie coordinator, Denard Wilson, who's never called a defense before, but has been in the NFL for a while, if you had to bet on the rookie coordinator and his bag of tricks versus the rookie quarterback and what he's capable of, what would you bet on?
Oh, the rookie coordinator, without question. The thing about the rookie coordinator is that he doesn't have to be right every time. He could mess up a couple of times and there'd be a big play here and there. And as long as it doesn't go to the house, that's okay. They can recover from that. The rookie quarterback, he has a couple of turnovers at the wrong place in the wrong field position in the wrong time. That could sink the entire game. And so there's a whole lot of good and bad potential, high and low ceiling for Caleb Williams in this particular game. And the worst thing he can do is to try to do too much because he will be under pressure for a lot of this game.
Trevor, we know Montez Sweat's on the Bears defense. We know Matt Eberflus, their coach, is a defensive coach. How much faith do you have in the big boys up front? Latham's a rookie, and then Radens and Petit Frere on the right side. How much faith do you have in Bill Callahan getting those big boys up front to make it look different than it has the last 2 years around here on the offensive line on Sunday?
I have a lot of faith. I think Latham is going to be really good right out of the gate. He'll make a few mistakes here and there, but again, when you look at the matchup, the thing the Bears have to show they can do better than they did last year was stop the run. Teams can run the ball on the Bears. So I expect at least early in this game, the Titans' offensive style to look an awful lot like it looked the last several years, except without Derrick Henry, which is to say, pound, 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 throw over the top. I can see a whole lot of that going on. Now, you'll know how the flow is going to go based on how successfully the Titans can run the ball early, because if they can, move the chains and keep things going on the ground and force the Montez Sweats of the Bears world to have to play the run first, then they're going to stay with it and they're going to keep pounding. And the thing about this offensive line is that as it's constituted, it's a whole lot better than it has been for years. You just look at Latham at left tackle, speaks for itself. I think Skoronski at left guard, he's coming into the season healthy. He's not, having to recover from appendectomy, for goodness sake. He's going to be a whole lot better, I think, than he was at the start of last year. And then Quisenberry at center is going to be a massive upgrade. And you just look at that side of the line alone, and you've got Cushenberry. I'm sorry. I said Quisenberry. Lloyd Cushenberry. He's one of the best young centers in the league. And I think that, the offensive line it should be a tremendously visible improvement over what they had early last season. If it's not, I'll be disappointed because of the nature of the Bears front.
Trevor, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do the Titans win on Sunday?
Yes, I think they went outright. I think they go old school. I think they have some big plays in the passing game, but it's game reliant on old school pounding the rock until the Bears show they can show it. And so far, I don't have any indication that they can.
Trevor Maddich picking the Titans on Sunday. Trevor, great stuff. As always, it was a great week one. We're excited for the NFL as well. Presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, we will talk next week.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Maddich picking the Titans to beat the Bears. I'm not surprised, but most people around the country are not going to do that. So at least keep that in mind. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. And coming up next, there is one thing that I believe that the Titans are truly holding on to. They think this is a big reason of why not only they're going to win, but they're going to win a lot this year. We'll get to that next. 102.5, 106 the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Here on the program, today is a Tuesday. I guess, I always talk about how once we get to the preseason, every Monday is a Titans Monday, except for the Monday after Labor Day weekend, because there's no game anymore. But again, we were on at 11 o'clock yesterday. It wasn't a very long show. So I guess that wasn't a Titans Monday, but next Monday will be a Titans Monday. And Trevor Maddich just came on the show. He's picking the Titans to beat the Chicago Bears. Now, again, I will make my pick during six-pack picks in the last segment on Friday, as we always do on the program. By the way, the SEC let me down this week, although I did pick against Vanderbilt, and so maybe that's on me. I know I've been hard on the whole toxic positivity vibe surrounding the Titans. Everybody's great. Everything's great. We're planning on Sadiq Charles being our right guard. It'll be great. Sadiq Charles retires. Oh, no, it'll be fine. Radens, he'll be great. It's great, 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 great. Brian Callahan, it's great. Everything's great. Great coach, great coordinators, great this, great that, great, great, great. Most of the country does not buy that. Most of the country is picking Chicago. I believe the line is 4.5. I think the line will close around 6.5 on Sunday for Chicago. That doesn't mean Chicago's going to win. It means I think that most people across the country are going to pick the Bears. There's a lot of hype on the Bears. There's absolutely no hype at all when it comes to the Titans. But what's hilarious to me is that while I have my concerns about the Titans, and I think depth is a serious issue. I think the offensive line I'm a little worried about. Worried about tight end. I'm still worried about replacing the Danico Autry sacks. I'm still worried about the secondary, even though Snead and Awuzie will play. But I get it. But the Titans are convinced they're a good team. They're convinced of it. From the head coach on down. Now, I haven't talked to the owner, so I couldn't tell you that the owner is convinced the Titans are a good team. But I think the owner, if I had to guess, is probably buying the hype. The owner's buying the hype. The GM, the president, they're buying the hype, it feels like. The coach is buying the hype. And the players are buying the hype. Now, again, week one was always that everybody thinks they've got a chance to be the surprise team. Every bad team thinks they have the chance to be the Houston Texans of last year. Most of them won't be. But every team thinks they have a shot. I'm sure the Chargers think they have a shot to win. But I found it fascinating yesterday that it was Harold Landry who was asked about the differences this year compared to the past and how what I think was an honest, probably hesitant statement that I think is kind of throwing Mike Vrabel under the bus.
How has it changed? I feel like it's changed in the sense that I know a lot of guys have said this, but I think it's like real. Like, I feel like when guys show up here now, guys feel confident that they can be themselves and that they can operate how they know they best operate to perform as good as they can on Sunday. Because everybody's different. I feel like guys are happy that they can come into the building and kind of trust the work that they've been putting in.
How you mentioned being able to trust the work that you put in now, that wasn't the case before, and if so?
No, I just think that I feel like, the old way was everybody was kind of locked into one way of like doing things. But now I feel like the box has been open and there's so many more people involved in the preparation process. And, like for guys who've done it for a while, there's a trust between us and the coaching staff that, everybody has different ways to prepare for the game. And I just feel like now we have that trust and that confidence to come into the building and, everybody can kind of not necessarily be locked into one box, but like guys know what they need to do to get ready for Sunday.
Doesn't it kind of sound like Harold saying Vrabel was my way or the highway? And this coaching staff makes it easier for every single person here to do their job. That's what it sounded like to me. What's amazing about that exchange is that Harold Landry was a Mike Vrabel guy through and through. So it kind of opens up a window into what most, I would assume, if not every single person in that building probably thinks. And what they think is Mike Vrabel was the problem. Now, I don't know on Sunday if that's going to matter or not. I would assume, based off of what we just heard Harold Landry say, that Harold Landry thinks it will. That, hey, Vrabel wanted everybody to prepare a certain way. This coaching staff wants me to prepare the way that is best for me to get ready to go with the game. And I'm sure many others feel the same way. In fact, I'm sure many of you feel that Mike Vrabel was probably the problem. And that the jump from Vrabel to Callahan is going to be the difference between winning and losing this year. And I can't knock you for thinking that. After all, I'm the guy who said that it was time for Mike Vrabel to go. There's always a but, though. And the but is that when all is said and done, not on the front end where everybody's excited for the season, just like everybody was excited for the season last year. And people were excited for the season last year because Mike Vrabel was the coach. But the way we'll determine if big, bad Vrabel really was the problem, it's not going to hinder on what a guy who is as respected as Harold Landry is says today. It will be what guys like Harold Landry do on Sunday. That'll be what determines it. If Brian Callahan pulls a Sean McVay, if you remember, the Rams were a joke. Literally a joke. Everybody laughed. Jeff Fisher, who is a joke himself, Jeff Fisher had turned that franchise into a crap hole. They had traded all those picks for Jared Goff, and people thought Goff might be a bust. He banned Eric Dickerson from the sideline and got fired because of it. And Sean McVay shows up and goes 7-2 to start the season. All of a sudden, Jared Goff making the Pro Bowl, the Rams lighten up the scoreboard. Couple years later, they're in the Super Bowl. There was some juice with Sean McVay. And we know Sean McVay's a good coach. If Brian Callahan is Sean McVay and they start 7-2, then I guarantee you everybody will say, see, Mike Vrabel was the problem. If it's 2-7 and Mike Vrabel gets mentioned for a bunch of jobs, then people around here will say, we had Mike Vrabel as the coach and let him go for this. So I don't know if the optimism around the Titans, I don't know if it is a certain confidence that this coaching staff has in themselves and this coaching staff has in this team, and it's trickled down to the players. I don't know if it is a sense that, hey, everybody in this building believes and that's all that matters. Or if it is as simple as we're better off without Mike Vrabel. Good riddance to bad rubbish. I don't know. And I don't know if that actually means you're going to be better or not. But again, it's not going to be decided in September whether or not you're better off without Mike Vrabel. It'll be determined in November and December if you're better off without Mike Vrabel. If you're going to win the AFC South, if you're going to pull the Texans, if you're going to pull the Jags, if you're going to do what 72% of the Titans fans on the preseason broadcast said and be the team that goes worst to first, if that's going to happen, then you'll all think that Vrabel sucked. If it doesn't happen, if this team is as bad as the betting odds say they're going to be, and we're talking about Shedeur Sanders and Carson Beck and, I don't know, maybe Diego Pavia, when it comes time to drafting a quarterback, then it'll be, we shouldn't have fired Vrabel. How you feel about Vrabel, not today, but long-term, will all be about how the next guy does. Now, it won't change my opinion, because my opinion is Vrabel's a good coach, but he needed to go. And even if they suck, it won't change my opinion. It does not change my opinion that Mike Munchak needed to go, even though Ken Wisenhunt was an unmitigated disaster. But I'm not talking about how I will feel. I'm talking about how you will feel. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Who loves the what if game or the would you rather game? Ian, do you ever play the would you rather game?
I'm not good at that game.
You shock me as the kind of guy who, when we say, would you rather Rosie O'Donnell or Roseanne Barr, you're like, oh, neither. You strike me as that kind of guy.
Yeah, that might be a little bit of truth to that.
I hate that. Well, I have a very fascinating would you rather. And what I think you guys would do is the opposite of what I actually think the Titans would do. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let me talk about Hiller Plumbing. False start, Ian. I still love you. Let me talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love my friends at Hiller. That's right. In fact, I had Hiller call me during the break because I got some work going on, and I got to call them back. I absolutely love Hiller. You've heard me talk about Hiller and how it feels like being part of a family. And it is. This month, Hiller is treating you like family, too, with their Friends and Family Savings event. The Happy Hiller Club members, like me, save up to $25 off of a first HVAC, plumbing, and electrical repair. And everybody else, even if you're not a member, you get a 10% discount. Present your coupon and save today. Visit happyhiller.com to download a coupon today. Again, you've heard me talk about the Happy Hiller Club. It's one of the best examples of the kind of special perks you have when you join. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
Oh, nothing surprises me. This is my 25th NFL training camp, so I would say that nothing surprises me in the National Football League. That's part of the job. I think it's, disappointing. I think you're disappointed, that you couldn't, do the job the way that they they wanted it or they envisioned it. But again, this is the opportunity that I think is best for me right now to be able to go through, draft meetings, personnel meetings with Andrew and his staff and see how that all got navigated and how they may do things. And there's 32 flavors in this league, and everybody does it a little differently. So it's been fun to be a part of this and try to help where I can, and most especially learn.
Cleveland Browns special assistant to the head coach, Mike Vrabel, a consultant, so he can still get his Titans money. So, again, I think that the Titans, they won't say it, but they're saying it. I think they think the reason that they've got a legitimate shot to be good this year is because they think Mike Vrabel was holding them back. And whether it was Vrabel or it was Vrabel's staff, it's all the same. It's the coaching. They thought the coaching was holding them back. So I texted somebody in the media. Not going to say who because I don't want to put them on blast. But I texted somebody yesterday after Harold Landry essentially threw Vrabel under the bus. And again, Harold Landry is as pro-Vrabel of a guy, I think, as they had. And I said, here's a question that popped into my head. If you bought the 33rd franchise in the NFL, and one of the conditions to get it supported by the ownership of the NFL, again, when we say the NFL, we're not talking about Goodell. We're talking about the 32 people that own that league. 31 and Green Bay. And in order to do it, the league said you have to take one of the Titans' contracts off their hands. It's a condition. You want it? You got to do it. Robinson or Vrabel. So, Ian, I'm going to put you in this hot seat.
Okay.
You have to hire one of them to be coach or GM
Of my team.
Robinson or Vrabel. Who would it be?
That is a tough question. I'm not going
I can promise you it's not tough for the fans that text this show.
Yeah. Man, as much as I guess I'm reluctant. I guess I'll go Vrabel, but reluctantly.
Okay. So the person I talked to said Robinson.
Mm-hmm. I was pretty close to picking Robinson.
And they said that I'd be more inclined to hire Robinson. He seems more willing to work together. And my theory on this, I'm torn on this. I would take Robinson.
It's close.
And here's why I would take Robinson. Because, like, with both guys, there's some good and there's some bad, right?
Yes.
Like, as much as you people want to dump on Robinson, he did win 61% of his games. He did draft A.J. Brown. He did draft Derrick Henry. He did draft Kevin Byard. He did draft Jack Conklin. He did draft Jeffrey Simmons. He did draft David Long. He did trade for Ryan Tannehill. He did do a lot of things. He won and got to the playoffs without Mike Vrabel. But I think Robinson, and this is just me, I think Robinson would be more willing to learn from his mistakes. The arrogance of, oh, well, if A.J. Brown doesn't want my contract, I will just go get the younger, cheaper A.J. Brown. I'll go into camp without a right tackle and a left guard. I think he will have learned from his mistakes, will listen to more people when it comes to Caleb Farley than Vrabel, who I think will double down on them. I think Vrabel will be like, if you hire me, you're hiring me to run the team my way and to bring in Keith Carter as the line coach and Shane Bowen as the defensive coach and so on and so forth. Okay, TD texted me and said that I could say it was him. I don't want, put TD's opinions out there without TD wanting his opinions expressed.
Thank you, Teron.
But it was TD who said he'd go with Robinson. And I mean, I'm super torn on this. I am telling you, I believe that if you were to go to the Titans, if you were to go to Amy and you were to go to the ownership group and you were to say, the league comes up to you and says you have to hire one of the two back, they would take Robinson before they would take Vrabel. Because I truly believe just what, the messaging that's come out, I think they believe that both of them were the problem, which is why she fired both of them. But I think that she thinks that Vrabel was the problem. That Vrabel's arrogance, had gotten to a point where it was time.
Even though they let go of Robinson first?
Yes. Because at that time, I think she believed that Vrabel was the straw that was stirring the drink.
Uh-huh.
And in reality, it was Robinson's doing some pretty reckless stuff, but Vrabel ain't helping, and neither are his coaches. And I say this because I think the fans would be the opposite. If you went to the fans and you said, hey, you got to bring one back, or you're starting a franchise, and in order to get it passed, you have to pick one or the other, that the fans would say, Vrabel. Because the fans just hate Robinson. But I think the way the Titans talk, just what comes out of that building, I think they blame Vrabel more than they blame Robinson for the mess they're in right now. And that's why they think they're going to be good, because with Robinson and the mistakes that were made, it probably takes a couple of years to fix that. Whereas with Vrabel, you bring in Bill Callahan and you go from terrible offensive line coaching to incredible offensive line coaching, and you're good. That's the theory. I'm torn. I would probably go with Robinson if I had to hire one or the other, but I think they're both good, and I think they're also both have their faults that got them into trouble. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025 on the program. You'll be surprised, Ian, to know that this has lit up the text line.
Oh, boy.
By the way, Chad calls you Ian Radence with 2 false starts in a row today.
Fair enough.
I mean, Ian has hit the brake twice too early today, but Ian is sick today.
I was on the phone with Trevor trying to talk to him and listen to you at the same time. And then I accidentally hit the button, and then we had the live read, and I wasn't paying close enough attention. So call me Fred Miller.
Yeah. I forgot about false start Fred. I mean, there is some Fred Miller there. And you know what? We're not going to do the Ian sick excuse because, I'm tired of hearing about Skoronski's appendectomy. One texter says it's because Brian Callahan is soft. He's a pushover. Practices are easier, and Vrabel was tough and pushed them to be their best. That is why they like Callahan more. I mean, maybe, but I don't think Harold Landry is not a hard worker. I know a lot of people that know Harold Landry pretty well, and I've never heard a bad word about Harold Landry. I don't think doing the work was a problem for Harold Landry. But maybe. Chad said Vrabel's offense definitely held them back. There was no creativity. Again, Vrabel didn't coach the offense, but that doesn't mean that Vrabel is without fault of the last 3 years of offense we've seen. And my theory on Vrabel and offensive coordinators are Vrabel doesn't really know what he's looking for. He doesn't know how to hire a good offensive coach. He's just standing there at the dartboard, and when he hit Arthur Smith, the only reason he hired Arthur Smith to be the offensive coordinator is because Matt LaFleur was trying to hire him to Green Bay. And Vrabel and LaFleur, I don't know if you've seen the end of some of these games, the Sunday night game at Green Bay, the Thursday night game at Green Bay, they don't like each other. And so LaFleur got the Green Bay job, and LaFleur was going to bring Arthur to be kind of his right-hand man. And Vrabel didn't want any part of that, and the only way you keep that from happening is you make him your coordinator and give him the play calling. So, I mean, that is when I look at the offense holding them back. I'm like, to me, that's kind of the Vrabel issue. Mike says, I'll always respect Vrabel for what he did here with the franchise moving to a younger quarterback. I don't think Mike had the stuff to grow one. He needs a job with a GM that gets him talent, and he just coaches. And I hope his next job has a veteran quarterback. Agreed. And I think if he goes to Dallas, I think if he goes to Philly, where Howie Roseman calls the shots, and he is not encroaching on Howie, or he goes to Buffalo, where Josh Allen is there, I think he's got a shot. If some team with no quarterback, I'm trying to think of who's a team that's got a young quarterback that they're going to try out. Pittsburgh. If it doesn't work this year with Russell and Fields and Tomlin and Pittsburgh mutually agree to part, and Vrabel takes over and they got to find a quarterback, Good luck. 615-737-1025. More your phone, 615-737-1025 ahead of the Bears in week 1. It's Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 the game. And we'll get to your phones next. 1025-1063 the game. Okay, your thoughts on Vrabel?
I was shocked. I mean, and they bring in Brian, Callahan from the Bengals, who didn't even call his plays there with Zach Taylor. I thought that was a horrific decision by the ownership of Nashville. I made no sense. Now, I know Vrabel didn't get another job, so that makes them look good that he wasn't gobbled up by somebody else.
Sure.
But Vrabel's a hell of a coach. Does a good job. He doesn't really have that well-known quarterback yet. We don't know about Levis. He looks like he might be good, but you can't. He had the one great game against Miami. You can't swear on that right now. We were all surprised. No, we weren't shocked because we think we maybe saw this coming. They did let A.J. Brown go a couple years ago. Maybe Vrabel wasn't on that page to do that. But, yes, most football people were surprised that Vrabel was let go. And most football people think, not that I talked to him, but this is just me listening, most people think that Vrabel got a raw deal.
Mad Dog Russo from the Super Bowl And I got to say this. I knew when Doggy was saying that at the Super Bowl, I was like, Doggy, I even said it to him after the show. I said, Doggy, you got to piss a lot of people off. That's when he was in just, how could they do it? So again, Harold Landry didn't chuck Mike Vrabel directly under the bus, but he threw him under the bus. Ian, would you say he threw Vrabel under the bus?
Not necessarily. I think it's just more of a
different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, maybe just more of a snapshot into the new regime. Not so much a shot at the old one.
I love my new boyfriend. He's so much better than my last boyfriend, was kind of the vibe. And Arden Key has said similar things. And Levis has, said a little something about freedom to do what he wants to do. And again, I'm convinced that the Titans think that they're going to be better because they think they've got a better coach. And I know the fans are probably disagree with this. Fans are going to decide what they think of Vrabel based on what Callahan ends up doing. But once again, I posed this to TD yesterday. I said, if you were starting the 33rd franchise in the NFL, and in order to get approved by the league, you had to take one of the dead Titans contracts and make either Vrabel your coach or Robinson your GM, who'd you take? And he said Robinson because he'd be more willing to work with others. Ian reluctantly said Vrabel. I am as on the fence as you can be about this, so I understand Ian's reluctance. I'll go Robinson too. One texter says, Robinson had so many bad draft picks. If Vrabel had better talent, his issues would not seem so glaring. So I think one thing that I don't know how accurate this is, other than to tell you that I have it on pretty good authority. It's not like John Robinson just made those picks by himself. Yes, he did, and he's responsible, and that's what being GM is about. That's why when you get hired to be assistant GM, there's not a press conference and nobody cares. But when you become GM, if you're a GM of a team, of a place where they pick the players, which is not always the case, but here and other places, that's why you have a press conference, because everyone wants to know what kind of players you're going to pick. So I don't think Robinson would throw Vrabel under the bus and say, hey, Vrabel and Arthur wanted Isaiah Wilson. But I have it on pretty good authority that Vrabel and Arthur wanted Isaiah Wilson. I know Vrabel threw a fit when they traded A.J. Brown, and we know Vrabel didn't want to trade A.J., and I got it. But at the same time, it wasn't just like John Robinson was Bobby Greer and Mike Vrabel was Bill Parcells, and Bill Parcells wanted to go to the grocery store to make the dinner. I think at the end, that's how Vrabel felt, and I think that's kind of what got Robinson fired, but I don't think that that's what the dynamic of their relationship was. Though you listen to Corey Curtis talk about it, and he basically said from his vantage point, it looked like Vrabel and Robinson went from best buddies to not even standing in the same vicinity of one another, which is pretty wild. One texter, Trent, says, I know Mike Vrabel wouldn't have let Jeffrey Simmons stay in practice that day that he threw the punch and got into it with Buck. That is true. And look, I'm not going to criticize anybody else's parenting, because when I'm a parent, I'm sure there will be plenty to criticize me about. So when Brian Callahan didn't throw Jeffrey Simmons out of practice that day, I said, I just disagree. Like, I would have done it differently. I like the idea that in a game, if you throw a punch, you screw your team over so badly, plus you get kicked out, that if you throw a punch in practice, you should deal with the embarrassment of having to take the walk of shame, go in the locker room and sit there and think about what you've done. Brian Callahan doesn't believe that. And now, again, we'll see with the discipline when they actually play the football games, we'll see who was right. But you are right. Vrabel would have thrown Simmons out that day. And I don't know how Vrabel would have handled the whole Simmons-Buck thing. I mean, in fairness, those are two of his favorite guys, Simmons and Buck. One texter who's clearly a Vanderbilt fan says, I'm excited about the possibility of both my teams having absolute dogs at quarterback, Diego Pavia and Will Levis. It fires me up. Well, let's see Will Levis do what Diego Pavia did on Saturday, and then you can get fired up. That would be the one thing that I would ask is, Pavia, I'm all excited about Pavia at Vanderbilt. I loved watching him play Saturday, and I'm hopeful, maybe he can steal him a Kentucky game or steal him I think South Carolina's on their schedule. Steal him a South Carolina. Like, they're not going to beat Missouri. They're not going to beat Tennessee. They're not going to beat Texas. Not going to beat Alabama. But maybe he can steal them some of those other games. But at least we have a game of Pavia carrying the entire team and sticking them on his back to say, okay, this guy's a dog. We don't have that yet with Levis. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to keep it real. One texter says, since Titan fans like mediocrity, Vrabel has to be the fans' choice. Not enough fans demand more. I don't know, man. I mean, the Titans were the number 1 seed, and then they were 7-5, and they fired the GM, and then a year later fired the coach. I don't think demanding more is something that Titan fans need to have a problem with. I think they demand more pretty consistently. Texture says the days of coaches ruling with an iron fist are over in the pros and even college now. And I think Callahan is going to be a better head coach than Vrabel, who inherited a playoff team. I consider Vrabel a Barry Switzer type coach who is a good hype guy. Well, I watched the Troy Aikman Football Life documentary, and the problem that Troy Aikman had with Barry Switzer, and remember, Troy and Barry went all the way back to his freshman year at Oklahoma. But the problem that Troy had with Barry was Barry just kind of let the players do whatever they wanted to. And that Troy felt like he had to be the one that was holding everybody accountable to get their asses to work. Well, I know that that's never going to be a problem with Mike Vrabel as your coach. You'll have other problems. Won't be able to find a line coach. Won't be able to get you an offensive coordinator. But working hard in practice, that's not going to be a problem with Vrabel as the coach. With Callahan, we'll see. I think Callahan has the respect of everybody, and I think Callahan is about business, and he is going to hold guys accountable and already has and things like that. I think that's going to play out. But if it doesn't, the Barry Switzer guy ends up being more Brian Callahan than it does Vrabel. Because, again, the issue that Aikman had with Switzer was that Switzer didn't hold anybody accountable. One texter says, the problem with Mike Vrabel is that he won't change coaches. He needed a Clark Lee moment, and that's coming from a UT alum. Boy, you know Clark Lee's a good guy and a good coach when people that are UT alums and UT fans are like, hey, salute that guy. You know, Chad Withrow, the biggest Tennessee fan I've ever met in my entire life. And he, I bet, was rooting for Vandy on Saturday because he has a lot of respect for Clark Lee. But I said this earlier today. You know, Chris Sanders always says you get 2 choices, get better or get bitter. And in the case of Vrabel and Clark Lee, they both had bad years. And I think Vrabel was going to go the route of getting bitter. Whereas I think that on the other side of it, Clark Lee, we know what happened to and 10 at Vandy, and he went out and changed the entire program. Ripped up his entire plan for what he was trying to do because it wasn't working. And I got to give him some credit for that. Whew. This is a hot take question. Jared from Spring Hill, Ian, says, you think Vanderbilt would beat Florida State?
Interesting. After what we've seen the first little bit, it doesn't seem that far-fetched considering what we would thought of at the start of the season. You only play a game or two, and look what happens.
I can't believe that both Georgia Tech and Boston College are good.
Georgia Tech is ranked now, I think.
Whatever.
They're 2-0.
I can't believe that both of those teams, which traditionally are crap bum schools, I can't believe that both of those schools are good. So what it makes me think is that Florida State really sucks.
It's possible, yeah.
And if Florida State really sucks, Florida State's probably about the same as Virginia Tech. And Vanderbilt just beat Virginia Tech. And Vanderbilt almost pissed the game away against Virginia Tech and still won. So put me down right now. If Vanderbilt played Florida State, I would take Vanderbilt today. Vandy plays Florida this year, don't they?
I'm not sure 100% off the top of my head.
You know what? I don't think they do, only because
Florida's schedule is super hard. I do know that.
We wouldn't assume that Vanderbilt would be on there if people said that Vandy.
Yeah, I don't think they do. No, according to our crack staff back here.
Jake?
No, intern Ian.
Oh, good job, intern Ian. Let's see. I got Vandy's football schedule in front of me. They're not going to beat Missouri. They're not going to beat Alabama. They're not going to beat Texas. They're not. Well, I mean, I say they're not going to beat LSU. They're probably not going to beat LSU, but LSU, I mean, Brian Kelly, he can't win that first game if his life depended on it. And they're not going to beat UT. Other than that, they could probably win some of these games, but they don't get Florida. And they don't. I think they get South Carolina.
Yes, they do. I do remember talking about that last week.
Yeah, maybe they can beat South Carolina. Though apparently South Carolina has some pass rusher that Twitter was telling me is just awesome. One texter says the problem isn't Vrabel, it's not Carthon, it's not Callahan, and it's not Robinson. It's something that can't be fixed. It's Amy. And before that, it's Bud Adams. And they are commonly all over the Titans' history. I'm not going to say you're right because I don't know. And I have a lot of respect for Amy, the person, because I know Amy a little bit, and I think Amy's a solid person. I really do. But at some point, we look at these other teams that never win, and we point back to ownership. And the Malarkey thing was all screwed up, and the Robinson-Vrabel thing was all screwed up, and the Vrabel-Carthon thing was all screwed up. And even now, this Chad Brinker is president, but what's he do, and what's Rand do, and that's every year it's a new management structure, and I hope you're wrong, Texter. I hope you're wrong. Only because there is no changing that. Like the owner, they're not selling the team. Like it is what it is. Eli from Smyrna says, do you think Vanderbilt still goes 3-9? No, I do not. And I will tell you that when they missed that kick, I thought to myself, oh my God, I've been watching Vandy for 30 years and I've seen so many Vandy games in that way, and I don't want that to happen to Clark, and I don't want that to happen to that young quarterback. And let me tell you something. That young quarterback, man. Woo! That young quarterback, he is a dog. All right, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I made a prediction, and it might have been a homer take, but I made a prediction on Friday that I actually feel really good about. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Oh, no, that was my fault. That one was on me. And that one, blame me.
Okay, thank you.
If you want.
I was going to say, man, I am off to a rough week
No.
here.
That one was that was Jared's fault. I promised some Sounds tickets, so let's give them away for Thursday. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a 4-pack of tickets to see the Sounds take on Gwinnett this Thursday at First Horizon Park. Good luck on that. Not going to say go Braves, but the Braves could use some major league wins, so hopefully they get all the bad players from the minor leagues, and leave them there and get all the good players to the major leagues. So enjoy that one with the Sounds. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for The Game.
Paul, what are the right things to say about the Seminoles on this Tuesday morning?
Well, that's the issue. People shouldn't be worried about the playoff screening. They should be worried about winning a game and trying to save the season. I don't think they can. Lewis is 100% correct in what he said last night. This season is over. I know that sounds like I'm going crazy. I'm not. This is a team that we were told deserved to be in the playoffs last year and certainly was going to be in the playoffs this year, and they're not going to. They can't do anything right. They can't go anywhere. They have no one else to blame. I'm sure somebody down there is saying, who can we sue? The only people to blame are themselves. And I hate to be critical of Mike Norvell, someone I'm a big fan of, but he's done a miserable job of getting this team ready to go. He must have been spending the offseason listening to all the fans belly aching about why they deserved to be in last year instead of Alabama. Well, here they are. They're suddenly an easy win on most teams' schedule, and we thought they were going to be a formidable opponent. They're not. They're terrible.
I tell you, I like this Feinbaum on TV way more than I like him hosting a radio show. You know, now I didn't listen to Feinbaum back in the day when he was on Jocks. You know, I've only known of the ESPN Feinbaum. And so, you know, the Feinbaum show is usually just Feinbaum sitting there in front of a camera saying, Mark is in Bellevue, Washington, and he's up next. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, Paul, let me tell you, I'll tell you right now. Way Diego Pavia played this week, Paul. I'll tell you what, man, they took that ball, man. He go down and fit it up, and they go touchdown, man.
It's like listening to Boomhauer from King of the Hill on a replay, on just repeat over and over and over. And then Paul just goes to the next caller. But Paul on TV is pretty funny. And Paul makes a good point, which is, well, Florida State sucks. Say it with me. Florida State sucks. On Friday, I picked my college football playoff teams, and I picked Louisville to go to the college football playoff. And many of you will say that that is a homer take. But I'm not convinced it is. Because Louisville played on Saturday. They beat Austin Peay by 10 million points. And yet the odds of them winning the championship, I saw an email today, went from 150 to 1 to 200 to 1. Now, I don't think Louisville's going to win the national title. Make no mistake about that. But again, Florida State sucks. Clemson sucks. And I don't think that any of these, Georgia Tech, Boston College, I don't think they're any good. I know they're ACC schools, but there's no way that both of them are good. You know, it'd be one thing if, no, Georgia Tech's actually better than we thought, but they're not. And so outside of Miami, I don't think anybody in the ACC is any good. And with our coach, surely, I mean, we were in the ACC championship game last year. With our coach, surely we've got as good of a shot as anybody not named Miami. And even Miami still has the moron coach that wouldn't take a knee last year. So what did we do wrong at Louisville to go from 150 to 1 to 200 to 1? And while I know when I picked them to make the playoff on Friday, I'm sure many of you heard that. And you thought, that is a homer take. But I'm sorry. Outside of Miami, and how much of Miami, their win on Saturday, was about the fact that Florida is a freaking tire fire. And you know the answer to that. So I'm just going to tell you right now, when it comes to Louisville making the playoff, I don't want to sound like Robbie Stanley, who almost took his pants off after Nico threw for 500 yards and a half. But I do want to say that I think we got as good of a shot as anybody else. And that is going to make this college football season. I asked somebody there that would know. I said, what's kind of the next big game for Louisville football after they beat Austin Peay by 1 million? And I think they play Jacksonville State this weekend. And they said, Georgia Tech. I'm like, Georgia Tech? No. So I'll own being a homer when I'm being a homer. But sometimes you got to pick your team because your team's good enough to do it. That's it for us. We are out of here. Wednesday means the work week starts for the Titans and the Bears tomorrow. ESPN Radio's next.